Chapter 596. Hearing Huitong's confident words, Qinchuan couldn't help but be surprised. He asked, "Even the Demon King is no match for you. Although I am not very talented, I have not wasted the past 10,000 years." Huitong smiled. Although the Demon King is very talented, he is only cultivated for less than 1,000 years. Qinchuan looked at Huitong curiously and asked, "Senior, what is the realm above the Yuanying realm?" Hearing this, Huitong looked deeply at Qinchuan and said, "Above the Yuanying realm is the Huashan realm." Huashan realm? Qinchuan was curious and asked, "What is the Huashan realm?" Hearing Qinchuan's question, Huitong answered, "The Huashan realm can see the power of the laws of heaven and earth. They can use the spiritual qi of heaven and earth to cast spells. As long as the spiritual qi of heaven and earth is endless, the spiritual qi will not dry up." Hearing Huitong's explanation, Qinchuan couldn't help but be shocked. He cried out involuntarily, "Then, isn't the Huashan realm in existence like a god?" Huitong shook his head gently and said with a smile, "The Huashan realm is the transformation of the mortal body into a god. However, this is only a beautiful name. The Huashan realm is only the beginning of cultivation." Beginning? Qinchuan was shocked. "Then what am I now? What is the Yuanying realm?" Qinchuan, in our world, the Yuanying realm may be an invincible existence. However, in the vast universe, the Yuanying realm is just an ant. Huitong looked meaningfully at Qinchuan and said in a low voice, "When I said that the Huashan realm is only the beginning, I was not lying." Hearing Huitong's words, Qinchuan was deeply shocked. He had thought that the Yuanying realm was not a powerful existence in a vast universe. However, he had never thought that a Yuanying realm cultivator would be called an ant one day. If that was the case, then wouldn't these golden core stage cultivators not even be considered as ants? They were only worthy of being called dust. Without waiting for Qinchuan to come back to his senses, Huitong continued, "The universe is vast and boundless. There are countless races and civilizations. If you don't see them with your own eyes, you will never be able to imagine how terrifying those powerful civilizations and races are. Perhaps they will only need to breathe, and our world will fall apart. Everyone will die in the storm." This time, Qinchuan was completely stunned. He could not help but think of that huge eyeball. Wherever it looked, not even a blade of grass would grow. It had single-handedly wiped out the entire dragon clan. Such terrifying power was definitely not something that could be stopped by a human. Moreover, the reason why the Dragon Ball was covered in dust might have something to do with that eyeball. It's still too early to tell you this now. In the future, when you leave this world, you will naturally be able to come into contact with those powerful existences. At that time, you will know that everything I said today is true. This world is far more complicated than you can imagine." Hearing Huitong's words, Qinchuan felt as if his view of the world had been greatly impacted. In the Star Dragon Federation, nascent soul cultivators were regarded as ancestors. They were high above and could summon the wind and summon the rain. But once they left this world, they were nothing more than ants. Who could accept such a huge difference? "Senior, is Zerg strong?" Qinchuan asked curiously. "If Zerg is strong, we shouldn't be able to resist their invasion, right?" Huitong shook his head and said to Qinchuan, "Zerg is far stronger than you can imagine. The reason why we can defend this world from being invaded is because the laws of this world have saved us." Hearing that, Qinchuan looked at Huitong with some confusion and asked, "Are the laws of this world different from the outside world?" Huitong looked at Qinchuan with a subtle expression and asked, "Do you know the name of this world?" Qinchuan nodded and replied, "I once heard a friend mention it to me. This world is called the Land of Exile." Hearing Qinchuan's reply, Huitong sighed and said, "The Land of Exile. This is a land of death." Qinchuan was shocked and asked in confusion, "Senior, why do you say that?" "Because the Yao clan and the human clan did not belong here. Because they made a big mistake. They were forced here by the alliance of countless races in the universe and were imprisoned here forever." Huitong looked at Qinchuan deeply and said with a complicated tone, "The land of exile exiles the human clan and the Yao clan." Hearing Huitong's explanation, Qinchuan felt that his worldview had been completely overturned. The human clan and the Yao clan lived in this world, not because they belonged here, but because they had been exiled here. Huitong was not surprised by Qinchuan's shock. He continued to explain to Qinchuan, "The land of exile has thin spiritual qi, and the power of laws is incomplete. In this place, the nascent soul stage is the limit. The further you go, the harder it is to cultivate. If you stay here forever, you will never reach the apotheosis stage. When Zerg came to our world, his level temporarily fell, and his power was limited. Otherwise, how could we be Zerg's match?" Qinchuan instinctively replied, "So that's why there are heirs of Yi." "Heirs of Yi?" Huitong was confused. "We're heirs of Yi." Qinchuan simply explained to Huitong, "The heirs of heirs are the geniuses of the younger generation selected by humans and demons. After some training, they're sent into the universe to go to a higher civilization. Because these young geniuses represent our world, they're called heirs of heirs." "I see." Huitong looked deeply at Qinchuan and asked, "You are also an heirs of Yi?" "I should be a reserve heirs of Yi. I still need to go through many rounds of selection before I can become one." Qinchuan clenched his fists and said to Huitong, "Senior, I don't want to stay in this world forever. I want to go out and see a wider world. I even want to bring the human clan and the Yao clan out with me." Hearing Qinchuan's words, Huitong looked at Qinchuan with a strange gaze. He asked Qinchuan, "It is not difficult for you to leave this world alone and travel outside. But do you know how difficult it is for you to lead the human clan and the Yao clan out? Everything depends on effort." Qinchuan looked at Huitong seriously. "No matter how big of a mistake the human clan and the Yao clan made back then, we should have paid it back after all these years." Huitong fell silent. After a long time, he said to Qinchuan, "If you want to leave this world, you must first pass Zerg. Zerg's world is just outside our world. It is very close." "I know it is difficult," Qinchuan said firmly, "but I'm not afraid." Chapter 597. In Heavenly Beast Temple, everyone looked at Qinchuan's black screen and were somewhat puzzled. They didn't understand why Qinchuan's screen would suddenly become pitch black. "Father Emperor, did Qinchuan encounter any accident?" Yao Rao somewhat worriedly looked at Yao Feng. "Why don't you quickly take a look at the situation?" Having heard Yao Rao, Yao Feng lightly shook his head, then said to Yao Rao, "Rest assured, Qinchuan didn't encounter any danger, but Father Emperor's monitoring method became ineffective after reaching that grassland." Hearing Yao Feng's answer, Yao Rao's face couldn't help but reveal a touch of surprise, then asked, "Father Emperor, what do you mean? How can the monitoring method become ineffective?" "Father Emperor can't answer you for the time being, but you can rest assured nothing will happen to Qinchuan." Yao Feng looked at Yao Rao with subtle gaze, then said to Yao Rao, "Not only nothing will happen to him, he will also obtain a huge opportunity." Having heard Yao Feng's words, Yao Rao was slightly dazed, but soon her face revealed a touch of pleasant surprise. Qinchuan himself possesses true dragon bloodline, so in Dragon Valley, he will definitely obtain an opportunity. Yao Feng nodded his head, then said to Yao Rao, "So you don't need to worry about Qinchuan." On the other side, other people were also spiritedly discussing the matter of Qinchuan's screen suddenly becoming black. Some people guessed that it was because Qinchuan had died, so the screen became black, and some people suspected that the monitoring method was interfered with. In short, everyone had different opinions, and no one knew the reason for the black screen. "Big cousin, did Qinchuan encounter any danger?" Ma Jiawen somewhat worriedly asked the Lion Duke. "Should we propose to His Majesty to stop the assessment?" Lion Duke didn't immediately answer Ma Jiawen. After a moment, he said to Ma Jiawen, "I have already asked Yao Feng. Qinchuan's screen became black because he entered that grassland full of sky dragon species, so it became black. In Yao Feng's words, there are sky dragon species that are stronger than him in that grassland." Hearing Lion Duke, Ma Jiawen was greatly surprised. "Then there are sky dragon species that are stronger than His Majesty in that grassland?" then wouldn't Qin Xuan be in even more danger? From Ma Jiawen's point of view, with the demonic Demon Emperor's strength, he would only need to lift a finger to kill Qin Xuan. If Qin Xuan were to encounter an existence stronger than the demonic Demon Emperor, wouldn't he be killed with a single breath? I'm not sure if Qin Xuan will benefit from it, but there shouldn't be any danger. Otherwise, Yao Feng wouldn't be so calm. Lion Duke laughed and said to Ma Jiawen, "Don't forget where Qin Xuan went this time, and who he is." After hearing Lion Duke's reminder, Ma Jiawen was slightly stunned. Then, she understood what Lion Duke meant. Qin Xuan, who had the true dragon bloodline, going to Dragon's Valley was the same as going back to his own home. If he could encounter danger here, then he would be too unlucky. But Qin Xuan was originally a human. Ma Jiawen's tone was a little strange, and she said, "Won't he still be in danger?" Lion Duke looked at Ma Jiawen and asked, "Don't tell me you think Qin Xuan is still a human right now?" To be honest, he looks more like a shifter than a human right now. After hearing Lion Duke's words, Ma Jiawen thought about it seriously. She felt that Lion Duke was right. Qin Xuan was indeed more like a shifter now. Just as Ma Jiawen and Lion Duke were talking, the Black Drake King looked at the black screen, and his expression became a little gloomy. With Qin Xuan's true dragon body, even if he faced a powerful sky dragon species, his bloodline would still be able to suppress them. It was basically impossible for Qin Xuan to encounter danger in that grassland full of sky dragon species. It was more likely that Qin Xuan would use his true dragon bloodline advantage to tame these sky dragon species, and then smoothly enter the dragon's nest to obtain the opportunity to enter Dragon's Valley. Once Qin Xuan obtained the opportunity, it would be difficult for him to obtain it again. Involuntarily, the Black Drake King looked at the image of the Snow River. At this time, the Snow River was still within the giant beast territory. It should still be some distance away from the grassland where the sky dragon species were. This made his expression turn even uglier. Qin Xuan followed behind Hui Tong and walked step by step toward the dragon's heart. According to Hui Tong's request, Qin Xuan had to kowtow every 3 steps and kowtow every 9 steps to comfort his ancestors in heaven. Qin Xuan did not raise any objections. He completely followed Hui Tong's request and kowtowed every 3 steps and kowtowed every 9 steps. He did not show any impatience or unwillingness. Seeing Qin Xuan's serious expression, Hui Tong was very pleased. As they walked, Qin Xuan had already forgotten how many times he had kowtowed and how many times he had kowtowed. The sun rose and set. When they reached the end of the grassland, it was already 3 days and 3 nights later. Standing at the edge of the grassland, Qin Xuan looked at the barren land in front of him. He could not help but feel a little sad. Looking at the white dragon bones buried under the yellow sand, he could not help but shed tears of sadness and pain. Ahead is where the dragon's heart is. It is also where the dragon's nest is. Hui Tong's voice was somewhat low as he said to Qin Xuan, "I can only send you here. You will have to walk the rest of the way yourself." Hearing Hui Tong's words, Qin Xuan pursed his lips and asked, "Senior, why has this place become like this? What happened back then? Once you enter the dragon's nest, you will naturally know why this happened." Hui Tong looked deeply at Qin Xuan and said to Qin Xuan, "Remember, no matter what, you have to come back alive. Right now, you are the only hope of the true dragon race." Qin Xuan nodded and took a step forward. When he looked back, he found that the sky was filled with yellow sand. There was no sign of the grassland or Hui Tong. Woo, woo, woo. A gust of wind blew by and swept up the yellow sand. Qin Xuan relied on the feeling in his heart and moved forward with his eyes closed. He did not know how long he had been moving forward in the wind and sand. He only stopped when the wind stopped and the sand disappeared. He opened his eyes and looked ahead. A huge stone palace built against a mountain entered his sight. This is where the dragon heart is. Is also the dragon's nest? Qin Xuan murmured softly. He looked curiously at the stone palace in front of him. It was covered in the marks of time. It was so fragile that it could collapse with a gentle breeze. When Qin Xuan wanted to take a step forward and look closer at the dragon's nest, he suddenly had a very uneasy feeling. It was as if an evil existence was hiding in the darkness and watching him indifferently. It could take his life at any time. This feeling, Qingchuan's expression changed slightly. It is that eyeball. That eyeball was hidden in the dragon's nest. Thinking of this, Qingchuan's expression suddenly became shocked. If his guess was correct, then the dragon's nest in front of him was too dangerous. Chapter 598. Qingchuan tried to distance himself from the dragon's lair. As he retreated, the feeling of being watched gradually faded. When he was about 1,000 meters away from the dragon's lair, the feeling of being watched completely disappeared. Qingchuan stopped retreating and looked at the dragon's lair with a serious expression. If the eyeball was really in the dragon's lair, then it was impossible for him to enter. He could not help but think of what Hui Tong had said to him before. He wanted him to return alive. At that time, he did not think there was anything wrong with those words. Now that he thought about it, Hui Tong clearly knew that the eyeball was in the dragon's lair, so he specifically reminded him to return alive. If he had not sensed the eyeball's existence and retreated immediately, perhaps he would have become a corpse by now. No, Qingchuan suddenly frowned. With his understanding of the eyeball, if it wanted to kill him, he should not have had the chance to retreat at all. If the dragon's lair really has something that can kill me instantly, Hui Tong should not have sent me in. Qingchuan thought for a moment and whispered, "Perhaps the eyeball only has the power of deterrence and does not have the power to kill. It is just a paper tiger." Looking at the dragon's lair in front of him, Qingchuan's expression was uncertain. He wanted to try again and see if the eyeball would attack him. If the test gave him the result he wanted, then everyone would be happy. But if it did not, then he might be in danger. "Big brother runic sword, at the crucial moment, you have to save me." Qingchuan grinned and whispered, "You don't want to be buried in a place like this for thousands of years, do you?" Faced with Qingchuan's threats, the runic sword was indifferent. Although Qingchuan was still uncertain, he more or less had an idea. Therefore, he tried to take a step toward the dragon's lair. As he expected, the feeling of being watched appeared again. The closer he got to the dragon's lair, the stronger the feeling of being watched. The evil aura almost enveloped his entire body. The strong pressure made it difficult for him to breathe. Even so, Qingchuan did not stop moving forward. As long as there was no danger that could kill him instantly, he would not stop. Step by step, Qingchuan slowly and steadily approached the dragon's lair. After 10 minutes, he finally stood in front of the dragon's lair's door. The strong pressure became more and more terrifying, making him feel like he could be crushed into meat paste at any time. Phew! Qingchuan took a deep breath and exhaled heavily. Qingchuan. Buzz! A huge eyeball appeared in front of Qingchuan without warning. It looked at Qingchuan with an extremely evil and ferocious gaze. The terrifying aura surged like a tsunami, as if it wanted to completely drown Qingchuan. Just as Qingchuan was terrified and thought he was about to be killed, the lavender fog that had floated in front of him was blocked by a golden light that suddenly appeared. It could no longer get close to Qingchuan. Seeing this scene, the huge eyeball suddenly became furious. It blinked crazily and shot out a purple ray of light towards Qingchuan. However, before the purple ray of light could get close to Qingchuan, it was blocked by the golden ray of light. At the same time, countless golden lights poured down from the top of the dragon's lair, completely enveloping the huge eyeball in golden light. The huge eyeball suddenly melted like snow under the sun and turned into nothingness. When the huge eyeball disappeared, the dragon's lair returned to its usual tranquility, revealing its original simplicity and desolation. It was as if nothing had happened before, but Qingchuan, who had experienced it personally, knew that everything that had happened just now was not an illusion, but something that had happened in reality. After gradually calming down, Qingchuan began to recall what had just happened and ponder the cause and effect of everything. There is actually no danger in the dragon's lair. Or rather, there is danger, but it will be blocked by the mysterious golden light. Everything that I felt before was deliberately created by the eyeball to scare me away. The eyeball just now should be a projection, not the eyeball's main body. Its main body should be sealed somewhere in the dragon's lair. is afraid of me. Qin Chuan looked subtly into the depths of the dragon's lair and muttered, "It is afraid that I will discover its main body." After confirming that the huge eyeball could not harm him, Qin Chuan's courage gradually grew. He sized up the environment in the hall and looked at the traces left behind by the true dragons of ancient times. He could not help but reveal a look of nostalgia. The dragon clan must have been very glorious and powerful back then. I'm really curious what mistake they made back then to be exiled to such a place. After strolling around the hall, Qin Chuan decided to go deeper into the dragon's lair to find the main body of the eyeball. If possible, he wanted to destroy the eyeball. This feeling, Shui, who was observing the grassland from the top of the mountain, suddenly had a change of expression. He took out a black eyeball from his storage ring and looked at the faint purple light emitted by the eyeball. His face suddenly darkened, and he said coldly, "Lord's sacred pupil is in trouble. It's at the end of this grassland. No, I can't continue to pretend. I have to find Lord's sacred pupil as soon as possible." Shui glanced at his surroundings and immediately rushed towards the grassland ahead as fast as he could. The speed he was currently displaying had completely exceeded the limits of a top-tier demon general. Even a demon commander might not be able to display such speed. Everyone in the Heavenly Fae Temple was shocked to see Shui's terrifying speed. Even Shui Gui, who thought that he knew Shui very well, was surprised. Shui's speed was not much slower than his. While everyone was discussing Shui's speed, he had already charged into the grassland. At the same time, the image monitoring Shui turned pitch black. Yao Feng could not help but reveal a subtle expression when he saw this. He whispered to Shui Qiu, "Judging from Shui's actions, Qin Chuan must have done something. Otherwise, he would not have lost his cool." Shui Qiu asked, "Will Qin Chuan be in danger?" "No." Yao Feng shook his head. "That person will not put Qin Chuan in danger." Chapter 599. The depths of the dragon nest were much cleaner than Qin Chuan had imagined, and the preservation was also more complete than the outside. At this time, Qin Chuan was walking in a long corridor. The two walls of the corridor were carved with many reliefs of the dragon race. At the top of the corridor was a huge statue of a swimming dragon. It looked lifelike and exuded a sacred and majestic aura. The corridor wasn't long, but Qin Chuan spent a lot of time walking. When he reached the end of the corridor, a huge stone door appeared in front of him. The stone door was engraved with a relief of two dragons playing with a pearl. Qin Chuan guessed that the pearl in the middle of the two dragons should be the dragon pearl. After admiring the reliefs on the stone door, Qin Chuan tried to open the stone door. However, the stone door was heavy. No matter how hard he tried, he could not move the stone door at all. If he wanted to open the door, he needed to find a mechanism. Brute force would not work. Qin Chuan looked around and finally fixed his gaze on the dragon pearl between the two dragons. He suddenly jumped up and reached out to press the dragon pearl. The dragon pearl sank inwards. At the same time, the tightly shut stone door slowly opened with a rumbling sound. When the stone door opened, what appeared in front of Qin Chuan was a huge golden palace. To Qin Chuan's surprise, the palace was not as clean and tidy as the corridor outside. Instead, it was messy. There were collapsed stone pillars everywhere, and the dome was full of cracks. A great battle must have broken out here. Qin Chuan looked at the dragon's remains under the stone pillar and couldn't help but reveal a sorrowful expression. He said in a low voice, "So many years have passed. Probably no one knows who you are or what you've done in the past." In addition to the dragon's remains, Qin Chuan also found the remains of a huge beetle beside the dragon's remains. The dragon's claws had penetrated the beetle's body, causing fatal damage. Even after thousands of years, the beetle's remains still exuded an extremely strong, evil aura, which made people feel very uncomfortable. Are they going to perish together? Qin Chuan murmured and slowly walked to the two skeletons. He wanted to check the condition of the two skeletons. At this moment, a black beetle the size of a calf suddenly drilled out of the remains and hissed at Qin Chuan. Seeing this black beetle that suddenly appeared, Qin Chuan subconsciously made an attack. But before he could touch it, the black beetle had already flapped its wings and flew behind him in an instant, stabbing a pair of sharp insect legs at his back. Clang! Qin Chuan abruptly turned around, and a sharp sword suddenly appeared in his hand. He swept it across and collided with the insect leg, causing a crisp sound to erupt. After blocking the black beetle's attack, Qin Chuan abruptly retreated and put some distance between him and the black beetle. He looked at the black beetle in front of him with extreme vigilance, and then glanced at the beetle's remains from the corner of his eye. He was not sure if there would be other black beetles crawling out, so it was best to be careful. Hiss! The black beetle gently flapped its wings and spun in the air, looking for an opportunity to attack Qin Chuan. Faced with the black beetle's undisguised attack, Qin Chuan did not hesitate and simply released his complete form, going all out to defeat this black beetle. The moment Qin Chuan's aura suddenly skyrocketed, the black beetle let out a sharp, ear-piercing hiss and then suddenly pounced on Qin Chuan. It opened its mouth and spat out a ball of dark green viscous liquid at Qin Chuan. This sudden attack at close range made it difficult for Qin Chuan to react immediately. He could only raise the long sword in his hand to block. The moment the dark green viscous liquid touched the long sword, it melted and broke into two. Seeing this scene, Qin Chuan was shocked. He immediately threw away the long sword in his hand and retreated. He also took out the pair of wind and thunder swords that Zhong Chuyu had given him from his storage ring. Whoosh! The black beetle opened its mouth and swallowed the dark green viscous liquid again, then spat it at Qin Chuan again, but this time it was less than the previous one. Seeing this, Qin Chuan did not dare to block with his sword again. Instead, he quickly inscribed the Thunderbolt Charm Array under his feet and quickly dodged the attack of the dark green viscous liquid. The dark green viscous liquid fell straight to the ground and immediately corroded a deep pit in the ground. The black beetle flapped its wings and quickly flew toward the place where the dark green viscous liquid fell. At this moment, Qin Chuan's figure was still there, and he quickly appeared in front of the black beetle. The spiritual power in his body surged and turned into the power of thunder attached to the wind and thunder sword. He fiercely slashed at the wings on the back of the black beetle. Chi! Although the sharp sword blade hit the wings on the back of the black beetle, it did not directly cut off the wings. It only cut off half of them. Hiss, hiss, hiss. The black beetle immediately let out an angry hiss when its wings were attacked. It turned around and stabbed a pair of sharp insect legs at Qin Chuan, wanting to force Qin Chuan to retreat. However, Qin Chuan did not dodge and forcibly blocked with the wind and thunder sword. With the advantage of the wind and thunder sword, the black beetle could no longer gain the upper hand. Its pair of insect legs were almost cut off. A large amount of black blood flowed out from the wound on its legs, emitting an extremely foul smell. Seeing that the black beetle was about to go berserk, Qin Chuan immediately retreated to distance himself from the black beetle. He glanced at the wind and thunder sword in his hand. After seeing that the wind and thunder sword was intact, he was relieved. When he looked at the black beetle again, his eyes were full of murderous intent. Without that highly corrosive mucus, let's see what other tricks you can play. The black beetle seemed to understand Qin Chuan's words. It immediately hissed at Qin Chuan and wanted to spread its wings to fly high. However, the injury on its wings prevented it from flying smoothly. Just as the black beetle staggered and adjusted its body, Qin Chuan's figure had already attacked like lightning. The wind and thunder sword his hand stabbed straight at the black beetle's head. The black beetle's head was protected by a thick carapace. The wind and thunder sword could not pierce through the black beetle's head. It only left 2 deep sword marks on the carapace on the top of its head. Even so, the black beetle was extremely angry. It hissed and pounced at Qin Chuan. Seeing the black beetle's actions, Qin Chuan could not help but sneer. What a fool! When the black beetle pounced in front of him, Qin Chuan suddenly fell back. At the same time, the wind and thunder sword in his hand stabbed again. This time, the target was the black beetle's soft abdomen. Uft! The wind and thunder sword easily pierced the black beetle's abdomen. From bottom to top, it completely penetrated the black beetle's body. Chapter 600. After Qin Chuan pierced through the black beetle's body, he immediately pulled back and avoided the black blood that spurted out from the wound. Hiss! The black beetle let out an extremely shrill scream and then fell to the ground with a plop. After struggling for a while, it fell to the ground and never moved again. Qin Chuan saw that the black beetle had lost its vitality. Qin Chuan also let out a long sigh of relief. Although the battle was very short, the black beetle still gave him a lot of pressure. If he had not blocked the black beetle and prevented it from swallowing the dark green mucus back, the outcome of the battle might have been different. Thinking of this, Qin Chuan could not help but feel a little curious about the dark green mucus. It was not that he had not fought with Zer before, but it was the first time he had encountered something as terrifying as this dark green mucus. Moreover, this thing could be recycled. This was something he never expected. Qin Chuan got up and slowly walked to the side of the deep pit on the ground. He glanced at the dark green mucus in the pit and was surprised to find that the dark green mucus had solidified and turned into a jelly-like state. This thing actually solidified. Qin Chuan picked up the broken sword from the ground and poked at the jelly-like mucus. He found that the broken sword was no longer corroded, but he still did not dare to reach out and touch it. Instead, he took out a mechanical box from his storage ring and carefully used the broken sword to pick up the jelly-like mucus and put it into the mechanical box. Qin Chuan put away the mechanical box, then turned to look at the black beetle on the ground. He did not immediately approach the black beetle's body. Instead, he tentatively attacked the black beetle's body with the power of thunder. When the power of thunder fell on the black beetle's body, the black beetle's body suddenly exploded, and countless black beetles flew out and pounced on Qin Chuan. Qin Chuan, who was already prepared, immediately waved his hand and used the power of thunder to kill all the black beetles, turning them into dust. Sure enough, there was a killer ambush. Qin Chuan chuckled. If I wasn't careful enough, I might have fallen into your trap. If you really want to die, then so be it. Why do you have to resort to these schemes? While speaking, Qin Chuan walked to the front and picked up the sword of wind and thunder from the ground. He carefully wiped it clean and put it away. He turned his head and looked at the remains of the dragon and the beetle. He slowly walked to the beetle's side and looked inside. When he saw the situation inside the beetle's remains, his face immediately turned ugly. Inside the carcass, there were dozens of insect eggs hanging upside down, emitting a weak aura of life. Among these insect eggs, there was a broken insect egg, which should belong to the black beetle he had fought before. These eggs must all be destroyed. Qin Chuan looked at the eggs with a serious expression. He raised his hand, wanting to use the power of thunder to shatter the eggs. However, he was worried that his attack would not only fail to destroy the eggs, but it would also help the beetles escape. Once he was surrounded by the beetles, he would be in a bad situation. After thinking about it for a while, Qin Chuan thought of a foolproof plan. He tried to activate the god spirit fire, but it awkwardly failed. Brother, this is a critical moment. Don't mess around. Qin Chuan looked helpless. Hurry up and activate it for me. Qin Chuan tried to ignite the god spirit fire again. After dozens of attempts, he finally managed to ignite the god spirit fire. However, he only managed to ignite a small portion of it. It should be enough to burn the eggs. Go! Qin Chuan threw the god spirit fire into the carcass stomach and quickly ignited all the insect eggs. At this time, the insect eggs trembled violently, and beetles that were not fully developed or fully developed crawled out. They were also infected by the god spirit fire, and they struggled to burn to death. Qin Chuan heaved a sigh of relief when he saw that all the eggs had been burned away. At the same time, he looked at the remains of the beetle. After discovering that the divine spirit fire could not do any damage to the remains of the beetle, a trace of regret flashed through his eyes. He said in a low voice, "As expected, it's useless. I can't even damage the remains of the beetle. If it was alive, I probably wouldn't even have the right to look at it." Thinking of this, Qin Chuan turned his gaze to the dragon's remains. He walked to the side of the dragon's remains and bowed solemnly to the dragon's remains. After doing all this, he turned and walked into the depths of the palace. Shui flew across the grassland. His body was like the wind. In the blink of an eye, he had traveled over 1,000 meters. He was extremely fast. Bang! Shui suddenly stopped and looked at the middle-aged man standing in front of him. He asked in a low voice, "Who are you?" "I am Hui Tong." Hui Tong looked at Shui calmly and said, "This path is blocked. Go back." Shui looked deeply at Hui Tong and asked, "You are the dragon race?" When Hui Tong heard this, he replied indifferently, "This is not something you should know." "What if I don't go?" Shui sneered. "If I want to go, you can't stop me." Hearing Shui's words, Hui Tong's eyes suddenly sharpened. He coldly said, "You are not of the demon race." "I never said I was of the demon race." Shui chuckled. He suddenly opened his mouth and a pair of extremely sharp insect legs came out. They tore Shui's body apart, and a dark green beetle crawled out. "I've been stuck in this stupid fox's body for so long. I can finally be free. Please remember my name. I am Feng Te. I am the great messenger of the holy race." Seeing Feng Te flapping his wings in front of him, Hui Tong's face couldn't help but show anger. He said in a low voice, "Zerg, it's the holy race." Feng Te sneered. "It's the holy race that completely wiped out the dragon race." Roar. Hui Tong didn't waste any more words with Feng Te. He directly charged at Feng Te. A terrifying aura pressed down on Feng Te. Facing Hui Tong's attack, Feng Te didn't have any intention of fighting. He flapped his wings and dodged Hui Tong's attack. He quickly flew towards the end of the grassland. "I have no interest in playing with you here. If we are fated, we'll..." Roar. Before Feng Te could finish, a grayish-black dragon suddenly appeared in front of him, blocking his way. Hui Tong stared at Feng Te with a sharp gaze and said in a deep voice, "All insectoids should die." Seeing this, Feng Te's expression suddenly became ferocious. He said darkly, "It seems that if I don't kill you, you won't let me pass." Chapter 601. Buzz. Qin Chuan suddenly turned his head to look in the direction of the grassland. His face was filled with shock as he cried out involuntarily, "What a terrifying aura!" Although he could not see anything, he could clearly feel that two extremely terrifying auras were fiercely colliding. The entire world was trembling violently because of this. One of the auras was familiar to Qin Chuan. It belonged to the Hui Tong. However, this was the first time that Qin Chuan had seen the other aura. However, he vaguely felt that it was familiar. After thinking for a while, he remembered that this aura was somewhat similar to Shui's. It's the guy hiding in Shui's body. Qin Chuan's eyes flashed with a hint of fear. Then, he looked into the depths of the palace. "No, I have to destroy that eyeball before this battle ends." Now, Qin Chuan was certain that the guy hiding in Shui's body must be aiming for the eyeball sealed in the dragon's nest. If the Hui Tong won this battle, everyone would be happy. However, if that guy won, then things would be terrible. Now, the most important thing for Qin Chuan was time. He had to find a sealed eyeball and destroy it in the shortest time possible. As for whether his judgment was correct or whether the eyeball was really sealed, he had no time to think about these questions because he had no way out now. Qin Chuan quickly walked to the end of the palace and saw a half-closed stone door. He walked in front of the stone door and looked inside. He saw a dark corridor. Although it was a little messy, there did not seem to be anything wrong with it. Just as Qin Chuan was about to step into the corridor, he suddenly heard a dripping sound. It was as if water was dripping down from above the corridor. Looking at the grayish-black water stains on the corridor floor, Qin Chuan subconsciously looked up at the corridor and happened to meet a pair of dark purple eyes that emitted an evil gaze. Whoosh! There was a piercing sound as a huge purple beetle suddenly appeared in front of Qin Chuan. It raised its sharp sickle-like legs and slashed straight at Qin Chuan. Qin Chuan did not hesitate to retreat and put some distance between him and the purple beetle. He looked at the saliva dripping from the purple beetle's mouth, and his expression suddenly became gloomy. The saliva that he had dripped from above the corridor was clearly the purple beetle's saliva. What a surprise! After so many years, the dragon's nest has turned into an insect nest. Qin Chuan took a deep look at the purple beetle before he took out the Zephyr Thundersword and prepared for battle. Hiss! Just as Qin Chuan was about to attack, several low sounds suddenly came from behind the purple beetles. Immediately after that, several figures appeared behind the purple beetle. Looking at the sudden appearance of these purple beetles, Qin Chuan's expression suddenly became ugly. He was just joking when he said that the dragon's nest had turned into an insect nest. He did not expect that he was actually right. If he encountered one purple beetle, he still had a chance of winning. But if he encountered so many, it would be a little difficult for him to win. However, no matter how difficult it was, he had to give it a try. 5 elements rotation, charm, array combination, start. As early as the confrontation with the purple beetle, Qin Chuan had been secretly inscribing the charm array. This time, in order to save time and end the battle quickly, he directly took out the strongest charm array combination he had mastered, hoping to directly rush through without any pause. Red flame. Qin Chuan roared in a low voice, and a blazing flame immediately spewed out from the colorful array diagram, rushing directly toward the beetles behind the stone door. He wanted to directly burn through the entire corridor with the fire and turn all the demons and monsters into ashes. In order to prevent the power of the red flame from being insufficient, Qin Chuan also deliberately stimulated a wisp of divine fire hidden in it. Like a hidden weapon, it launched a sudden attack on the beetles that encountered it. All the beetles in its path were unable to resist. The fire raged and continued to burn in the corridor for 2 minutes. When the divine fire did not encounter any new beetles, Qin Chuan extinguished the fire and lifted his foot to walk into the corridor. At this time, the air in the corridor was extremely hot, and the burnt smell left behind by the beetles was everywhere. After checking that there were no other living things in the corridor except for him, he quickly walked to the end of the corridor. Standing at the end of the corridor, Qin Chuan could see a huge pool, but the water in the pool had long dried up and was replaced by full of beetle eggs. Looking at the countless beetle eggs, Qin Chuan sighed deeply and whispered, "This has really become a beetle nest, but there should be more than just beetle eggs." As he spoke, Qin Chuan raised his head and looked up into the sky. Sure enough, there were hundreds and thousands of beetles hanging upside down in the air above the pool. Thousands of eyes were staring at him with extremely ghastly and evil gazes. I don't know why, but I suddenly feel like cursing. Looking at the densely packed beetles, Qin Chuan grinned. I shouldn't have rushed in so recklessly. I was careless. Buzz. Just as Qin Chuan was speechless and complaining, the beetles above the pool flapped their wings together and burst into sharp screeches from their mouths, rushing straight toward Qin Chuan. Seeing thousands of beetles rushing toward him, Qin Chuan turned around and ran without hesitation. Fighting thousands of beetles at the same time in such a spacious area was simply courting death, so he had to take advantage of the corridor's terrain to fight these beetles. Qin Chuan ran extremely fast with the help of the Thunderbolt Talisman Array, but the flying speed of those beetles was not slow either. Seeing that the beetles were about to catch up, Qin Chuan had no choice but to temporarily use the Thunderbolt Talisman Array to condense a lightning shield behind him to seal off the corridor. He wanted to stop the beetles from attacking. However, the beetles in front sensed the presence of danger and wanted to stop, but the beetles behind had no intention of stopping at all. They pushed the beetles in front into the lightning shield. The power of lightning surged and destroyed dozens of beetles before dissipating. However, even more beetles stepped on the corpses of their companions and bravely charged towards Qin Chuan. Seeing this, Qin Chuan immediately repeated the same trick and set up several more thunder shields. However, these thunder shields could not cause any hindrance to these irritable beetles and only killed about 100 more beetles, which did not change the overall situation. Whoosh! Qin Chuan rushed out of the corridor as if his feet were smeared with oil. Then, he turned around and threw out a palm-sized golden net. The golden net spun in the air and suddenly expanded, completely enveloping the half-closed stone door. At the same time, the beetles in the corridor rushed over and crashed into the golden net. They were unable to break through the blockade of the golden net, and were all blocked by it. Chapter 602. Kacha Kacha. The beetles at the front were blocked by the golden net, but the beetles at the back surged forward. The powerful pressure instantly crushed the beetles at the front into a pile of mush. Blood and flesh splattered everywhere. Seeing this scene, Qin Chuan could not help but frown and whisper, "This is too disgusting." Although Qin Chuan was disgusted by the craziness of the beetles, he was still quite happy because he had made the right bet. The golden net had indeed blocked the beetles. Speaking of which, Qin Chuan had only wanted to try and see if the golden net could block the beetles. He did not expect the effect to be so good. If one were to talk about the origin of the golden net, one would have to mention the city lord of Silver Fir City in the mountain. As a city lord and a nascent soul cultivator, the gift of Senior Silver Fir City is really not bad. It must be at least a top-grade magic treasure. Qin Chuan smiled gently. It's a pity that this golden net has no name. Why don't we call it Heavenly Net? Heaven's net has long arms, but nothing escapes. Today, I will use Heavenly Net to get rid of all these beetles. Looking at the beetles that were blocked in the corridor by the Heavenly Net, Qin Chuan did not hesitate to inscribe the combination of the 5 elements circle charm array again. He was ready to burn these beetles with the red flame. Red flame. Following Qin Chuan's angry roar, the red flame spewed out from the charm array and rushed into the swarm of beetles through the gaps in the Heavenly Net. The raging flames quickly burned the beetles' corpses into a thick black liquid, sticking the beetles together. The entire corridor was a mess. Qin Chuan did not care about the chaos of the beetles. He only cared about burning them. Sooner or later, he would burn all these beetles to death. Just as Qin Chuan was thinking about this, the 2 terrifying auras that were entangled together suddenly separated. Qin Chuan paid attention to the changes in the 2 auras. His expression could not help but become a little ugly. Although the 2 auras were a little weak, the aura that belonged to the Huitong was even weaker. Oh no, Huitong can't stop that guy. Qin Chuan's expression was grave as he looked at the beetles that were still blocking the corridor. His brows were knitted together. If he couldn't get rid of these beetles as soon as possible, that guy might come for him. Senior, just hold on for a little longer. Just a little longer. Qin Chuan gritted his teeth. He raised his hand and took out a disc array and a talisman brush to inscribe a talisman array. Originally, he did not plan to use the all-directional thunder prison. Now, it seemed that he had to use it, and just as Qin Chuan was inscribing the talisman array, the grassland was already in a mess, almost turning into a desert. Ha! I've already said that you're no match for me. Feng Te was flying in the air, covered in blood. Looking at Huitong, who was covered in blood, he sneered and said, "If you get out of the way now, you might be able to live. If you don't, then I can only kill you. Any Zerg deserves to die." Huitong stared at Feng Te with hatred. "Even if I die, I won't get out of the way." Even though millions of years had passed, Huitong's hatred and disgust for the insectoids had not weakened at all. Instead, it had increased with each passing day. Otherwise, he would not be fighting to the death with Feng Te here. "Do you really want to die? You've lived for so many years. It's not easy for you to cultivate to your current level." Feng Te stared coldly at Huitong. "It's not too late to regret it now." Huitong glanced at Feng Te's injuries and said in a low voice, "Although I'm already at the end of my rope, how good is your condition? It's enough to kill you." Feng Te saw that Huitong had no intention of getting out of the way, so he did not waste any more words with Huitong. He directly attacked. He opened his mouth and spat out a ball of dark green mucus at Huitong. Huitong, who had already experienced the power of the mucus, immediately retreated. He did not want to be contaminated at all. Seeing Huitong retreat, Feng Te did not give up. He immediately controlled the ball of dark green mucus to form a huge net in the air that covered the sky and the sun. It completely sealed off the surrounding area and enveloped Hui Tong. Seeing that he could not dodge the attack of the dark green mucus, Hui Tong roared angrily. He opened his mouth and spat out a ball of dark gray dragon breath in an attempt to break through the seal. Give up struggling. It's useless. Feng Te sneered. The wings on his back flapped quickly. A hurricane suddenly appeared in the sky and swept toward Hui Tong. Hui Tong swept his tail and cut the hurricane in half like a sharp blade. Just as the hurricane was being torn apart by Hui Tong, Feng Te's figure suddenly charged out of the hurricane and appeared in front of Hui Tong in an instant. Seeing Feng Te appear, Hui Tong was shocked. Just as he was about to force Feng Te back, Feng Te suddenly took out a black eyeball and threw it at him. The black eyeball spun in the air and looked at Hui Tong. The moment Hui Tong was stared at by the gray eyeball, his body could not help but stiffen on the spot. At the same time, the net made of dark green mucus in the sky suddenly fell and tightly bound Hui Tong. Roar! The moment his body was bound, the dark green mucus immediately began to madly corrode Hui Tong's body. In just a short moment, Hui Tong began to howl in pain. Feng Te looked at Hui Tong's painful appearance and sneered. I already told you to get out of the way, but you didn't listen. Do you regret it now? Hui Tong did not reply to Feng Te because he was in so much pain that he could not speak a complete sentence. The feeling of his body and soul being corroded bit by bit almost made Hui Tong collapse. The feeling of being corroded by our sacred clan's holy water must be very uncomfortable, right? Feng Te looked at Hui Tong's painful appearance and sneered. Don't struggle. Just die like this. Just as Feng Te was about to give Hui Tong a fatal blow, a dark cloud suddenly appeared in the distant sky. A thick lightning pillar fell from the sky and made an earth-shattering sound. Seeing this scene, Feng Te's eyes flashed with anger. He roared, Damn it, it's that Qin Chuan. What is he trying to do? At this moment, Feng Te no longer cared about killing Hui Tong. He directly flew towards the place where the lightning fell. Rumble! The terrifying lightning power suddenly fell and directly hit the insect swarm in the corridor. It suddenly exploded in the insect swarm and wreaked havoc. Qin Chuan frowned in discomfort as he watched the beetles struggling and screaming amidst the bombardment of lightning. These things were too noisy, and their voices were too loud. Just as Qin Chuan wanted to divert his attention, he suddenly realized that the aura that belonged to Hui Tong was extremely weak. Furthermore, there was a terrifying aura rapidly approaching him. Chapter 603. That guy is here. Senior Hui Tong has lost. Qin Chuan's expression suddenly changed. He did not dare to delay any longer. He directly pushed the thunder prison into the corridor. At the same time, he also entered the corridor. With the protection of the power of thunder, he quickly rushed forward through the swarm of insects to save as much time as possible. Damn it, where's that eyeball? Qin Chuan passed through the swarm of insects and came to the hall again. He did not even have time to clean up the dirt on his body. He looked around, but he did not see any other passageway other than the pool. Seeing that there were beetles struggling to get up from the swarm behind him, Qin Chuan raised his hand and threw out the skynet again, blocking these beetles in the corridor. After confirming that these beetles could not break through the skynet, Qin Chuan looked at the insect eggs in the pool in front of him. Looking at the insect eggs that were in the process of being incubated, Qin Chuan frowned slightly and whispered, Is the passageway under these insect eggs? Qin Chuan intended to use the same trick against these insect eggs and burn them with the crimson flames of the 5-element cycle talisman array. However, just when he took out his talisman brush and was about to inscribe a talisman array on the formation disk, someone suddenly patted his shoulder lightly, and then an extremely cold voice resounded in his ears. Little guy, what are you doing? Hearing this voice that seemed to come from the depths of hell, Qin Chuan's entire body stiffened, and he felt a chill all over his body. A sharp insect leg stretched out in front of Qin Chuan, hooked Qin Chuan's chin, and slowly turned Qin Chuan's head. When Qin Chuan turned his head, What greeted his eyes was a dark green beetle head. "We finally meet." Fengte looked at the stiff expression on Qinchuan's face and smiled playfully. "Hiding in that damn fox's body all day and dealing with you is really tiring." Hearing Fengte's words, Qinchuan was finally certain that the one hiding in Xuehe's body was an enemy from Zerg. His purpose was probably the same as his, which was to get the eyeball. However, while he wanted to destroy the eyeball, Fengte wanted to find it. "Why don't you speak? Are you so scared that you lost your ability to speak?" Fengte looked at Qinchuan with a smile and a ferocious expression on his face. "You're putting me in a difficult position. After all, I want to eat a happy you." Facing Fengte's threat, a complicated look flashed in Qinchuan's eyes. He said in a low voice, "I'm not your match. If you want to kill me, then do it." Facing Fengte, who could defeat the Huitong, Qinchuan didn't know how to resist even if he wanted to. Whether it was in terms of realm or strength, Fengte completely crushed him. The so-called resistance was just a joke. "Kill you?" Fengte sneered. "I really can't bear to kill you now. Do you know that I was really shocked when I saw what you did when I came in?" While speaking, Fengte looked back at the corridor behind him and said to Qinchuan, "You killed so many sacred ones by yourself. This is something I didn't expect at all. I didn't expect you to be more capable than I expected." Hearing Fengte's words, Qinchuan's heart skipped a beat. He asked, "So you want to use me?" "That's right." Fengte smiled. "Now that my identity has been exposed, it's inconvenient for me to do a lot of things, so I need a new spokesperson. You have a very good position in both the human race and the shifter race. You're a very suitable candidate." Qinchuan looked at Fengte with a subtle gaze and asked, "What do you want to use me for?" "A lot of things." Fengte looked at Qinchuan. "What do you think?" Qinchuan looked deeply at Fengte and asked, "You don't want to kill me now. Aren't you afraid that I'll betray you when I get out?" "I'm not afraid." Fengte shook his head. "I'll hide in your body. If you dare to betray me, I'll kill you directly." Qinchuan's expression changed slightly. He asked, "Just like when you possessed Xuehe's body, it's easy to talk to smart people." "You're right." However, he refused to cooperate with me at that time, so I directly erased his consciousness. "But you're different. I'll keep your consciousness. What do you think? Am I good to you?" Fengte smiled. "So you'd better not play any tricks with me. Now open your mouth." Looking at the ugly smile on Fengte's face, Qinchuan knew that if he refused to cooperate with Fengte, Fengte would kill him without hesitation. But if he cooperated with Fengte, he would be controlled by Fengte and become a puppet like Xuehe. This was a situation that he absolutely did not want to face. "What's your name?" Qinchuan looked at Fengte. "At least let me know how to address you." "My name is Fengte. I'm a great messenger from the Sacred Clan." Fengte looked coldly at Qinchuan. "You better not play any tricks with me." Cough, cough. As he spoke, Fengte suddenly began to cough violently. He actually opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of black blood. The aura on his body also became somewhat chaotic. When he saw this scene, Qinchuan's eyes flashed. He immediately understood in his heart that Fengte's previous strength was just a disguise. Fengte had also suffered quite a serious injury in the battle with Huitong. "Boy, open your mouth." Fengte looked coldly at Qinchuan. "Even if I'm injured, I'm still not someone you can deal with. You'd better not think about using the power of the Thunder Calamity or the Divine Fire to fight back. For your own life, you'd better cooperate with me." At this moment, Fengte's insect leg was placed in front of Qinchuan's neck. As long as Qinchuan dared to make any strange movements, Fengte would immediately kill Qinchuan. Qinchuan himself was well aware of this, so he had not made any moves until now. However, Qinchuan still wanted to try. He would rather die than be controlled by Fengte. Qinchuan looked at Fengte with a subtle gaze and asked, "You're here to find that eyeball, right?" Hearing Qinchuan's words, Fengte's face suddenly changed. He said in a deep voice, "How do you know about this? Who told you?" This matter was top secret. Other than him, there was absolutely no second person who knew about it. "No one told me. I found it myself." Qinchuan pursed his lips. "It's a dark purple eyeball. It's been sealed." Feng Te immediately asked anxiously, "Where did you see that eyeball? Tell me immediately." Qin Chuan did not immediately answer Feng Te's question. Instead, he took out something from his storage ring. It is the golden bottle he had picked up from the river. That eyeball is in here. Chapter 604. Feng Te gradually calmed down as he looked at the golden bottle in Qin Chuan's hand. He looked at Qin Chuan and said coldly, "Are you trying to trick me?" Qin Chuan slowly squatted down and placed the golden bottle on the ground. Then he said to Feng Te, "My life is in your hands. If I dare to lie to you, even if you fall into my trap, you can kill me immediately. I still have a bright future ahead of me. I don't want to die." Feng Te could not help feeling conflicted as he looked at the golden bottle Qin Chuan had placed on the ground. He originally had a black eyeball that could detect the sacred pupil's location, but he had used it to control Hui Tong in order to defeat him. He had left in a hurry and did not bring it with him, so he had lost the means to detect the sacred pupil's location. The sacred pupil being sealed in the dragon nest should be a top secret that no one else should know about. However, Qin Chuan had accurately described the sacred pupil's appearance. This meant that Qin Chuan must have seen the sacred pupil before. However, he could not confirm whether Qin Chuan was telling the truth about the sacred pupil being in the golden bottle. If it was true, it would be great news for him, but if it was false, he might fall into Qin Chuan's trap. Although he should not be worried about being tricked by Qin Chuan with his strength, it was better to be safe than sorry. It was never wrong to be a little more cautious. Feng Te coldly snorted as he looked at the golden bottle on the ground. "You open the cork." Qin Chuan did not hesitate and crouched down to open the bottle. Feng Te could not help feeling puzzled when he saw Qin Chuan's straightforward actions. Did this kid really not play any tricks? Was the sacred pupil really inside the bottle? While Feng Te was pondering, Qin Chuan moved aside and said to Feng Te, "Take a look yourself. The eyeball is inside, and it's very big. I feel that this is not its original appearance. I estimate that its original appearance should be about the same size as the mountain range outside." Feng Te, who was still hesitating, could not help but become excited again when he heard Qin Chuan's words. Qin Chuan actually knew the original size of the sacred pupil. In that case, what Qin Chuan said before should be true. Filled with excitement, Feng Te approached the golden bottle and looked at the mouth of the bottle. However, before he could see clearly what was inside the bottle, an extremely powerful suction force came from the bottle. Feng Te subconsciously wanted to retreat away from the mouth of the bottle. However, at this moment, the power of the thunder tribulation fell with a loud bang and bombarded his back. Although the power of the lightning tribulation didn't cause too much damage to Feng Te, it successfully caused Feng Te's body to stiffen temporarily. It was this moment of stiffness that caused Feng Te to be unable to shift his gaze away from the mouth of the golden bottle in time. A powerful suction force erupted and instantly sucked him into the bottle. Qin Chuan, who had been waiting by the side for a long time, immediately stepped forward and blocked the mouth of the bottle with the stopper. "Bottle, oh bottle, you must hold on. Don't let it break." Qin Chuan muttered as he nervously looked at the golden bottle in his hand. This time, it could be said that he was really going all out. If this golden bottle couldn't trap Feng Te, he would be dead for sure. 1 second passed. 10 seconds passed. 1 minute passed. Nothing happened to the golden bottle. This allowed Qin Chuan to relax. At the same time, he rejoiced. If it wasn't for the golden bottle, he would have been dead today. "I didn't die. You're the one who died, Feng Te." Qin Chuan looked at the bottle in his hand and chuckled. "Slowly look for your eyeball in the bottle." While speaking, Qin Chuan had already confirmed that the cork was sealed properly. After confirming that there was no problem, he put the golden bottle into his storage ring. Now that there was no external interference, he could finally put all his attention on finding the eyeball. Although he still didn't know what the eyeball was or what it meant to the insectoids, since Feng Te was so worried about the eyeball, he had to destroy it. Even if he couldn't destroy the eyeball, he had to hide in a place where no one would ever find it. "The thing that Zerg wants is the thing that I'm going to destroy." After making up his mind, Qin once again looked at the pool not far away that was full of insect eggs. He took out a talisman pin and a formation plate and inscribed the 5 elements circle charm formation as fast as he could. Then he began to burn the insect eggs in the pool with the red flame. When the insect eggs broke, countless larvae that had not fully developed crawled out of the eggs and cried out in pain. However, Qin completely ignored them. He would never show them the slightest mercy. In the raging fire, countless insect eggs and larvae were burned to death. However, to Qin surprise, these insect eggs and larvae did not emit a burnt smell like the beetles before. Instead, they emitted a fresh fragrance. Qin did not think that the fragrance came from the insects themselves. The reason for the fragrance should have something to do with the water in the pool. At this time, most of the insect eggs in the pool had been burned, revealing the bottom of the pool. Qin could clearly see that there was still some golden water at the bottom of the pool. There was not much of it, and the smell it emitted was basically the same as the smell of the larvae after they were burned to death. This pool of water is not afraid of the fire. It has no intention of evaporating at all. Qin looked at the little water at the bottom of the pool and said regretfully, "It's a pity that the insect eggs have absorbed all the water in the pool. What a waste." Qin originally wanted to collect the remaining water at the bottom of the pool, but when he thought of the countless insect eggs that had been soaked in the water, he felt a little uncomfortable and finally gave up on the idea. The pool has been cleaned, but there are no other passages. Is this the deepest part of the dragon's nest? Qin frowned and looked around. Where's the eyeball? Buzz. Just as Qin was thinking about these questions, he suddenly heard a buzzing sound. He subconsciously turned his head in the direction of the sound and saw a thumb-sized golden beetle flying in the air, extending its sharp insect legs at him. Seeing this golden beetle, Qin was shocked. Just as he was about to retreat, the golden beetle suddenly flew over and hit Qin on the forehead. Then, the golden beetle's body suddenly softened into something like a stream of water and drilled into Qin's body through the pores on his forehead. Chapter 605. Oh no! By the time Qin had this thought, the golden beetle had already disappeared from his perception and burrowed into his brain. Plop! Qin's body fell heavily to the ground, stirring up a cloud of dust. Then the dragon's nest quieted down, and only the remaining flames were still burning quietly. Buzz! In Qin's brain, the golden beetle's figure suddenly appeared. It opened its bright golden eyes and looked at the completely unfamiliar place in front of it. Just as it was about to fly around to look around, a wisp of green smoke suddenly appeared in front of it and gently floated around it. Seeing this wisp of green smoke, the golden beetle instinctively felt some danger and wanted to go around it. However, when it was about to turn around and leave, it suddenly found that it was completely surrounded by the green smoke and had nowhere to go. The moment the golden beetle was completely enveloped by the green smoke, Qin's consciousness also descended into his brain. He looked around nervously, looking for the golden beetle's figure, but to his surprise, the golden beetle had disappeared. Whoosh! The runic sword suddenly appeared in front of Qin and then pointed the tip of the sword at a cloud of green smoke not far away. Qin received the signal from the runic sword and subconsciously looked at the cloud of green smoke. He asked with some uncertainty, "You mean the golden beetle that just flew in is in the green smoke?" The runic sword hummed softly in response. Seeing the runic sword's response, Qin let out a long sigh of relief and said to the runic sword, "Big brother, you're like a real brother to me. If you hadn't trapped the golden beetle, I might have died today." When the golden beetle rushed over, Qin was really frightened and broke out in a cold sweat. When he felt the golden beetle enter his body and rush into his brain, he subconsciously rushed in, wanting to stop the golden beetle. However, he was much slower than the golden beetle. By the time he came in, the golden beetle had already been trapped by the runic sword. Fortunately, the runic sword had made a move. Otherwise, who knew what kind of mess the golden beetle would have made in his brain? Just as Qin Chuan and the runic sword were talking, a small bump suddenly appeared in the green smoke enveloping the golden beetle. This bump grew longer and longer until it was the length of an adult's index finger. Then it shrank back. Seeing this scene, Qin Chuan was a little surprised. Is the golden beetle struggling? Before Qin Chuan's voice fell, another bump appeared in the green smoke. Obviously, the golden beetle was not willing to be trapped inside. Seeing the golden beetle constantly struggling, Qin Chuan frowned slightly and asked the runic sword, "Can you make it behave? I'm really a little afraid that it will mess around in my brain." The brain was an extremely important place for every cultivator. If the golden beetle broke through the green smoke's blockade and rushed out, causing havoc in his brain, it would not be fun. The runic sword expressed helplessness at Qin Chuan's request. The green smoke could only trap the golden beetle and prevent it from messing around. It was impossible to make the golden beetle completely calm down. When Qin Chuan saw the runic sword's response, he asked with some doubt, "What is the origin of this golden beetle?" Although the golden beetle did not look any different from other beetles, its aura was very different. The other beetles Qin Chuan had encountered, including the Zerg warriors, all had an evil and sinister aura, and their appearances tended to be ferocious and ugly. However, the golden beetle's aura gave off a dignified and holy feeling, and it also looked a little charmingly naive and cute. Most importantly, Qin Chuan did not feel any hostility from the golden beetle. When it rushed towards him, it was not so much an attack as a subconscious action. It was as if there was something in his brain that was attracting the golden beetle. The runic sword also did not know the origin of the golden beetle. Qin Chuan could not help but feel a headache. He could not keep the golden beetle trapped in the green smoke forever. It was like a ticking time bomb. Who knew when it would explode? He had to deal with it as soon as possible. I have to get rid of this beetle. I still have to find that eyeball. Qin Chuan frowned and said to the runic sword, "Disperse the green smoke temporarily and let the golden beetle out." Hearing Qin Chuan's words, the rune sword did not hesitate and simply let the green smoke disperse. Now, Qin Chuan's brain was his headquarters. He could trap the golden beetle a moment ago, and he could trap it a second time later. The moment the green smoke dispersed, the golden beetle flew out with a whoosh. Its target was the center of Qin Chuan's brain. After realizing what the golden beetle's target was, Qin Chuan's face suddenly changed. He stretched out his hand, and a golden pill flew towards him from the center of his brain. When the golden pill flew over, it also caused the golden beetle to change its direction and quickly rush towards Qin Chuan. Just as the runic sword wanted to trap the golden beetle with the green smoke again, Qin Chuan stopped it. "Don't worry about it. Let it come." Hearing Qin Chuan's words, the runic sword stopped moving. However, it still carefully stared at the golden beetle. If the golden beetle dared to make any strange movements, it would immediately stop it. The golden pill flew into Qin Chuan's hand. The golden beetle flew over almost at the same time and landed on the golden pill. It gently hugged the pill with its 4 short legs and then rested its head on the pill. Its body made a buzzing sound, as if it was enjoying it very much. Seeing the golden beetle's behavior, Qin Chuan breathed a sigh of relief. At the same time, he was finally sure that the golden beetle was here for his demonic core. This demonic core was produced when I advanced to the Foundation Establishment stage. It also underwent a transformation in the Tianfeng Plateau. It should have a mixture of the aura of a true dragon and a phoenix. This golden beetle should be here for the aura of a true dragon. Qin Chuan muttered in a low voice. Looking at the golden beetle's silly appearance, his expression could not help but become a little strange. Logically speaking, this golden beetle should be a Zerg like the eggs and beetles he burned, but its aura was very different from Zerg. If Qin Chuan had to give this golden beetle a clear label, then this little guy should be a combination of Zerg and a dragon. Zerg's body, the aura of a dragon. This was a ankylosaurus? A dragon worm? Chapter 606. This thing. Looking at the golden beetle that seemed to have fallen asleep on his Yao core, Qin Xuan felt a headache coming on. He really didn't know how to deal with this little thing. At this moment, this golden beetle seemed to be defenseless. If he wanted to kill it, he should be able to directly stab it to death. However, in his heart, he was resisting killing this golden beetle. For the time being, I'll call you Little Armored Dragon. Qin Xuan thought for a moment and decided to give this little thing a name first. As for how to deal with this little thing, he still had to think about it. After thinking for a while, Qin Xuan looked at the runic sword and asked, "Do you think this little armored dragon is harmful?" When the runic sword heard Qin Xuan's words, it didn't seem to have any intention of answering this question. It floated motionlessly beside Qin Xuan. Seeing that the runic sword didn't respond, Qin Xuan was a little helpless. He smiled bitterly and said, "Big brother?" When it heard Qin Xuan call it Big Brother, the runic sword made a rather proud buzzing sound, and then swayed on the spot. When Qin Xuan saw that the runic sword only responded after he called it Big Brother, he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. After seeing the runic sword swaying left and right, he asked, "You're saying the little armored dragon is harmless?" The runic sword buzzed again and swayed up and down. Seeing that the runic sword gave an extremely clear answer, Qin Xuan asked curiously, "How do you know the little armored dragon is harmless?" Although the little armored dragon's current behavior seemed to be harmless, this little armored dragon was still Zerg after all. It was very difficult for him to so easily believe that the little armored dragon was harmless to him. He needed the runic sword to give him a definite reason. When the runic sword heard Qin Xuan's words, it suddenly flew towards the little armored dragon. He gently tapped the little armored dragon's back with the tip of the sword, but the little armored dragon didn't respond at all. It was still sleeping soundly. The runic sword was even bolder and used the tip of the sword to poke the little armored dragon's back. The little armored dragon only shook its butt and still didn't want to wake up. Seeing this scene, Qin Xuan couldn't help but grin. This little guy is too cute. As a boy, I'm about to melt when I see this little thing. Qin Xuan smiled. Through the verification of the runic sword, he had basically confirmed that the little armored dragon was harmless to him. Moreover, with the runic sword in his mind, if the little armored dragon wanted to do anything to harm him, he believed that the runic sword would immediately stop it. "Big bro, I can't call you big bro for nothing. Let this little guy lie on my Yao core. But you have to help me keep an eye on him. If he does anything to harm the Yao core, you have to stop him in time." Hearing Qin Xuan's words, the rune sword swayed up and down, indicating that it understood. Whoosh! Qin Xuan, who was lying on the ground, sat up and looked around. After confirming that there was no problem, he stood up and looked at the pool. At this time, the eggs in the pool were almost completely burned. The whole pool was empty except for some golden liquid left at the bottom of the pool. Looking at the crystal clear pool, Qin Xuan had a headache. He had already searched all the places he could find, but where was the eyeball hidden? He couldn't find the eyeball now, but the threat of the eyeball would always exist. Zerg's people would come looking for the eyeball endlessly, whether it was for the sake of the humans and demons or to deal a blow to Zerg. He had to find the eyeball and destroy it. If there is no passage here, is there another passage in front? Qin Xuan turned his gaze to the corridor behind him with some doubt. At this time, the pile of beetles had already turned into black mucus or mutilated corpses, emitting a nauseating stench. He looked at the big hole in the Skynet at the exit of the corridor and couldn't help but feel his heart ache. He didn't have time to use such a good artifact more than a few times before it was destroyed by Feng Te. What a pity. Thinking of Feng Te, Qin Xuan took out the golden bottle and looked at it. There was still no movement in the bottle, and it was intact. It seemed that unless he took the initiative to open the bottle, Feng Te would not be able to come out. I don't know how Senior Huitong is doing now. Qin Xuan frowned slightly. He suddenly felt conflicted. I can't find the eyeball now, and I don't know how to get to the dragon nest. Should I go back and check on Senior Huitong's situation, and then ask Senior Huitong about the eyeball? After thinking for a while, Qin Xuan gave up the idea. First, whether he went back now or not, Senior Huitong's situation would not change. Second, if Senior Huitong really understood the situation in the dragon nest, there was no reason for him to let these beetles occupy the dragon nest, which was of great significance to the dragon race. Therefore, he could only count on himself now. Thinking of this, Qin Chuan could not help but feel a little frustrated. He was alone in the huge dragon nest, and he might not even be able to find the eyeball. Forget it. Let's look around first. As a man of action, Qin Chuan never liked to waste time hesitating and being conflicted. He walked around the main hall again. After confirming that there were no secret passages, he went back the way he came. He planned to go back to the previous palace through the corridor and then conduct a carpet search. At this time, in order to find the eyeball, Qin Chuan had completely forgotten about the test. Just as Qin Chuan went back the way he came to continue looking for the eyeball, the heavenly demon temple was already in a heated discussion. From Qin Chuan to Xue He to Hu Xiao, the surveillance footage of the three of them had all gone black. Your Majesty, the situation seems to be a little out of control, Xueqiu said to Yao Feng in a somewhat worried tone. Now that their surveillance footage has gone black, it can be said that we don't know anything about the situation in the Dragon Valley. If Xue He wants to harm Qin Chuan and Hu Xiao, what should we do? When there was surveillance footage, perhaps Xue He would be afraid of Yao Feng interfering, so he would restrain himself a little. But now that the surveillance footage had gone black, even if Xue He didn't notice it at the first moment, he would definitely notice it later. Once Xue He made a move without any scruples, Qin Chuan and Hu Xiao would be very likely to be killed. Hearing Xueqiu's words, Yao Feng pursed his lips, then said to Xueqiu, "I know what to do." Seeing Yao Feng was still sitting calmly, Xueqiu couldn't help but look at Yao Rao, who was sitting at the side restlessly, then said with a sigh, "Your Majesty, do you have the heart to watch our daughter suffer like this?" Hearing Xueqiu's words, Yao Feng took a subtle glance at Yao Rao. Then after a moment of silence, he said, forget it. I will make a trip." Chapter 607. Qin Chuan struggled to pass through the corridor filled with water beetle corpses and returned to the palace. After a short rest, he began to search for other passageways in the palace. However, after a round of searching, he found nothing. This isn't right. Qin Chuan was puzzled. The eyeball must be in this dragon's lair. Why can't I find it? In Qin Chuan's opinion, the eyeball must be sealed somewhere in the dragon's lair. There must be something special about the place where it was sealed, so it should be easy to find. However, he could not find it. There must be a problem somewhere. Qin Chuan carefully recalled everything that happened along the way. He did not miss anything, but no matter how hard he tried, he could not figure out what he had missed. If I really can't find the problem, I'll walk this path again. Qin Chuan pursed his lips and looked forward. He decided to start from the moment he walked into the dragon's lair. He would walk through all the places he had walked through. Qin Chuan got up and walked outside. When he passed by the remains of the dragon and the beetle, he glanced at them and was about to withdraw his gaze. But at this moment, he suddenly stopped and stared at the remains of the dragon not far away. There are many insect eggs and small beetles in the beetle remains. What is in the dragon's remains? With this question in mind, Qin Chuan looked at the dragon's remains with a subtle expression. He wanted to see what was in the dragon's remains. Perhaps there would be an unexpected discovery. Elder, if there is nothing in your remains, I will kowtow to you and apologize. As Qin Chuan spoke, he slowly walked to the side of the giant dragon's remains. Just as he was about to jump up and take a look at the situation, the giant dragon's eyes actually slowly opened, shooting out a sinister purple light. Dong! Dong! Dong dong! A low, drum-like sound rang out in Qin Chuan's ears. When he heard this sound, Qin Chuan's expression changed abruptly. His eyes were filled with shock as he stared at the giant dragon's remains. Was that a heartbeat? A dragon that had been dead for tens of thousands of years still had a heartbeat. Just as Qin Chuan thought of this, several hideous purple veins suddenly appeared in the dragon's heart, causing the originally sacred dragon's remains to suddenly become wicked. Seeing the changes in the dragon's remains, Qin Chuan seemed to have thought of something. His expression instantly became gloomy. Is it that eyeball? Is it really hidden in the dragon's remains? Kacha, kacha. The dragon's remains that had not moved for tens of thousands of years struggled little by little and slowly got up from the ground. He turned his dragon head very stiffly to look at Qinchuan. One purple, I stared at Qinchuan's tiny figure with a hideous and evil gaze. Facing the gaze of the purple eye, Qinchuan subconsciously chose to avoid it. He dodged and hid behind the beetle's remains. His heartbeat could not help but speed up. What should I do? What should I do? Qinchuan was a little uneasy. The dragon's remains gave him too much pressure. I can't just hide like this. I have to think of a way. Qinchuan gritted his teeth. Didn't I come here to find that eyeball? Now that it has appeared, how can I be afraid? Roar. The dragon's remains stood up completely. It raised its head and let out a loud roar. Then, it raised its huge dragon claws and stomped on the beetle's remains. Zap! Before the dragon's claws fell, a lightning suddenly lit up and turned into a long whip that wrapped around the dragon's claws, causing the dragon's claws to slow down for a moment. At the same time, Qinchuan suddenly jumped out from behind the beetle's remains. Using the pulling force of the lightning whip, he quickly approached the dragon's claws and climbed up the dragon's body along the dragon's claws. Seeing that Qinchuan had taken the initiative to jump out, the giant dragon roared and lowered its head to bite Qinchuan. However, Qinchuan relied on his nimble body to dodge the giant dragon's attack. At this time, he had already seen that although the giant dragon skeleton was extremely strong, its movements were extremely slow. As long as he could exploit this weakness of the giant dragon skeleton, there was still a chance for him to turn the tables. Whoosh! Qinchuan leaped high into the air and landed nimbly on the back of the dragon's remains. He peered through the gaps in the remains and saw a huge purple eyeball in the dragon's heart. At this time, this eyeball was attached to the dragon's remains like a heart, controlling the movements of the dragon's remains. If it were not for the surrounding golden rays, this eyeball might not have stayed there quietly. Found you! When Qinchuan saw this purple eyeball, the first thing he wanted to do was to bombard it with his strongest attack, the power of thunder. However, before he could do anything, the dragon's remains suddenly shook violently. He almost lost his balance and was thrown out. Roar! The dragon's remains let out an angry roar. Obviously, it did not want Qinchuan to get close to the purple eyeball. It turned its head and looked at Qinchuan with its only eye and suddenly shot out a purple ray. However, before this ray could get close to Qinchuan, it was blocked by the golden rays that suddenly appeared in the air and turned into nothingness. Seeing this scene, Qinchuan was relieved. He was basically sure that this eyeball could not cause any other attacks to him except for controlling the dragon's remains to make some physical attacks on him. As long as he was not hit by the dragon's remains, the scales of victory would definitely tilt in his favor. Qinchuan reached out and grabbed the bulge on the dragon's remains, trying his best to stabilize his body. No matter how the dragon's remains shook, he did not want to be thrown out. However, although he could stabilize his body by doing this, it was difficult for him to aim at the purple eyeball and attack it. The gap is too small. In addition to those golden rays, I need a stable environment to attack it. Qinchuan gritted his teeth. Suddenly, he roared and transformed into his true dragon form. Then, he fiercely pounced on the dragon's remains. He actually wanted to use brute force to press the dragon's remains to the ground. However, Qinchuan underestimated the power of the dragon's remains and overestimated his own strength. He could not suppress the dragon's remains at all. Just as Qinchuan was thinking about how to suppress the dragon's remains, a low roar suddenly sounded behind him. Qinchuan, I'm here to help you. A huge white tiger figure suddenly appeared in the palace and pounced straight at the dragon's head. The powerful force directly pressed the unguarded dragon's head to the ground, making it unable to move. Qinchuan's face suddenly showed a touch of excitement when he saw this. He once again looked at the purple eyeball sealed by the golden rays. Chapter 608. At this critical moment, Hu Zhao's sudden appearance could be said to have given Qin Chuan a shot in the arm, relieving him of a lot of pressure. He could concentrate more on finding an opportunity to attack the eyeball. In the face of the threat brought by Qin Chuan, how could the sealed purple eyeball sit still and wait for death? It controlled the dragon's remains to break free from Hu Zhao's suppression. However, Hu Zhao's strength was much greater than it had imagined, and it could not break free. It has been dead for tens of thousands of years. Even if it was a real dragon, it should be crawling before me now, not to mention a smelly bug like you. When Hu Zhao saw the dragon's remains still struggling violently, he immediately roared angrily. A domineering and powerful white tiger phantom suddenly appeared behind him, suppressing the dragon's remains with the power of a mythological beast. If the real dragon was here, the divine beast white tiger's phantasm might not have any effect. But now, Hu Zhao was facing the remains of a giant dragon that was controlled by the purple eyeball. Besides brute force, the divine beast white tiger's phantasm didn't have any other abilities of a real dragon. The effect of the divine beast white tiger's phantasm was quite great. Under the deterrence of the mythological beast white tiger phantom, the purple eyeball's control of the dragon's remains was obviously a little slower, and its movements became more stiff. This was definitely great news for Qin Chuan. Qin Chuan grabbed the back of the dragon's remains tightly with his dragon claws. A pair of golden vertical pupils aimed at the purple eyeball that was sealed in the golden light through the gap. He opened his mouth and roared angrily. He was about to use the dragon horn to trigger the power of thunder tribulation to bombard the eyeball. However, at this moment, the sealed purple eyeball suddenly shrank and became the size of a palm. Seeing the purple eyeball shrink, Qin Chuan suddenly had a very bad premonition in his heart. He suddenly raised his head and shouted at Hu Zhao, "Run, it's dangerous." Before his voice died away, Qin Chuan turned and quickly ran away. After receiving Qin Chuan's warning, Hu Zhao did not dare to hesitate and turned to run. However, before the two of them could run far, the dragon's remains suddenly swelled and exploded. Countless purple rays of light shot out from the dragon's remains and covered the entire palace. Qin Chuan and Hu Zhao, who couldn't dodge in time, were penetrated by the purple light. They howled as they were nailed to the wall. The pain of their bodies and souls being corroded at the same time made Qin Chuan and Hu Zhao feel like they were better off dead. Just when Qin Chuan and Hu Zhao thought that they would be shot to death by the endless purple light, a blazing red flame suddenly descended into the palace, blocking the purple light that was shot at them. At the same time, it also burned the purple light that had already shot into their bodies, allowing them to escape. Wong. A buzzing sound suddenly came from the center of the palace, revealing extreme anger and unwillingness. The purple light rays that shot out suddenly shrank and gathered together to form a purple eyeball the size of a palm. It looked at the red flame that suddenly appeared with a gloomy gaze, but did not do anything. "Destroy it." Qin Chuan looked at the purple eyeball and shouted at the red flame. It consumed a lot of energy to break the seal. Its aura is very weak now. We must destroy it. If the purple eyeball's aura was as strong as the sun when Qin Chuan first discovered it, then the purple eyeball's aura was as weak as a light bulb now. It was the best time to destroy it. After waiting for Qin Chuan's reminder, the red flame prepared to attack the purple eyeball. However, at this moment, a spatial rift suddenly appeared behind the purple eyeball. The purple eyeball looked at Qin Chuan deeply with a murderous gaze, then turned and entered the spatial rift. The red flame immediately spat out a fireball to chase after the purple eyeball. An extremely painful buzzing sound came from the spatial rift. At the same time, the spatial rift closed, and the purple eyeball completely disappeared. Seeing this scene, Qin Chuan's pale face couldn't help but reveal a touch of helplessness. If he was a bit stronger, he would not have let the purple eyeball escape so easily. The red flame floating in the sky slowly shrank and finally changed into a tall figure and landed in front of Qin Chuan and Hu Zhao. Seeing this figure, Qin Chuan was extremely surprised and asked, "Your Majesty, why are you here?" Yao Feng looked at Qin Chuan with a complicated gaze and said, "If I didn't come, perhaps you and Hu Shao would already be dead." Hearing Yao Feng's words, Qin Chuan nodded frankly, then said to Yao Feng, "Thank you very much, Your Majesty, for saving my life." "Don't say this." Yao Feng took out a red pill and threw it to Qin Chuan. "Eat it." Qin Chuan looked at the scarlet pill thrown by Yao Feng and very easily recognized that this was the phoenix blood that Yao Rao had given him before. So he didn't hold back and directly opened his mouth and swallowed it into his stomach. As for Hu Shao, Yao Feng did not need to worry about him. Before he came in here, Tiger King had given him a life-saving pill. Now was the time to take it. "Tell me, what happened to you two?" Yao Feng looked at Hu Shao and Qin Chuan. "What is that purple eyeball?" At this time, Qin Chuan was meditating, so Hu Shao smiled bitterly and answered, "Your Majesty, actually, I don't know anything. When I was at the edge of the grassland, I sensed two extremely powerful auras fighting. I didn't dare to get close to them. After one of the auras left, I finally had the courage to enter the grassland. After that, I met a dragon that was dying. He asked me to come here to help Qin Chuan, saying that Zerg was invading. So, I came here, and coincidentally, I saw Qin Chuan and the purple eyeball that was controlling the dragon's remains fighting." When he heard Hu Zhao's words, Yao Feng could not help but turn his gaze towards Qin Chuan. He said indifferently, "In that case, only Qin Chuan knows what happened?" Hu Shao nodded and looked at Qin Chuan with a complicated expression. He said softly, "Indeed, only he knows what happened here." While Yao Feng and Hu Shao were talking, Qin Chuan stopped meditating. He let out a long sigh and smiled at Yao Feng. "Thank you for the phoenix blood, Your Majesty." "Aye." Before Qin Chuan could finish speaking, a long sword suddenly appeared in front of him, pointing straight at his throat, causing him to swallow the rest of his words back into his stomach. "Your Majesty, what is the meaning of this?" Qin Chuan looked at Yao Feng confusedly. If Yao Feng wanted to kill him, there was no need to waste a drop of phoenix blood. Yao Feng looked at Qin Chuan calmly and asked, "How are you going to prove to me that you are Qin Chuan and not Xuehe?" Chapter 609. Facing Yao Feng's question, Qin Chuan let out a sigh of relief. He grinned and said, "Your Majesty, if I were Xuehe, I wouldn't have killed that purple eyeball." When Yao Feng heard Qin Chuan's explanation, he didn't say anything else. He casually put away his sword. When Hu Shao saw this scene, he was filled with confusion. What was Qin Chuan's relationship with Snow River? "Tell me, what is going on?" Yao Feng looked at Qin Chuan and asked, "What is the origin of that purple eyeball?" "Your Majesty, can we go back to the grassland first?" Qin Chuan looked at Yao Feng and said worriedly, "I am very worried about Senior Huitong." Yao Feng heard Qin Chuan's words and looked deeply at Qin Chuan. He didn't refuse. He waved his hand and swept Qin Chuan and Hu Shao away from the dragon nest. In an instant, they appeared on the grassland and stood in front of Huitong. Huitong was in human form. He was very weak. His body and soul were extremely weak. It was not an exaggeration to say that he was on the verge of collapse. Looking at the dark green net around Huitong, Qin Chuan anxiously asked Huitong, "Senior, how are you?" Hearing Qin Chuan's words, Huitong opened his eyes with difficulty. He looked at Qin Chuan, but couldn't say anything. "I have seen his situation before. He is about to die." Yao Feng sighed. He had known Huitong for hundreds of years. He knew Huitong's strength very well. Even if he went all out, it would be difficult to beat Huitong to this state. It could be seen how fierce the battle Huitong had been in. "Your Majesty, there must be a way to save him." Qin Chuan was very anxious. He had used his insect leg meat to help Ningya and Zhong Qiu go through the disaster. He had used it all. Otherwise, he could have used it to try. As for Lion Baron's insect leg meat, it had been eaten long ago. Yao Feng shook his head and said to Qin Chuan, "He has hurt his Dao foundation. It is difficult to heal him with medicine. Even if you give him the phoenix blood and the consul's leg meat, it will not be able to heal him. Unless..." Qin Chuan heard this and immediately looked at Yao Feng. He asked anxiously, Your Majesty, unless what? Yao Feng looked deeply at Qin Chuan and said seriously, there are only two things that can save him. The first is the blood of a true dragon's blood. The blood of a true dragon's blood can bring the dead back to life. It has the effect. Hearing Yao Feng's words, Qin Chuan's expression became serious. He hesitated for a while before he gritted his teeth and said to Yao Feng, Your Majesty, how much effort do we need to save him? Are you sure you want to use your blood to save him? You have to know that with your current realm, you will need a lot of effort to save him. Perhaps it will be very difficult for you to continue cultivating in this lifetime. Why don't you listen to the second thing that can save him? Before Qin Chuan could say anything, Yao Feng continued, the second thing that can save him is the true dragon's water. We should be in the dragon's nest right now. We might be able to find the true dragon's water in the dragon's nest. Hearing this, Qin Chuan's eyes lit up. He quickly asked, Your Majesty, is the true dragon's water a type of golden water? Yao Feng was stunned. He looked at Qin Chuan in shock and asked, It has been tens of thousands of years. Is there still true dragon's water in the dragon's nest? Qin Chuan nodded and said to Yao Feng, Your Majesty, bring Senior Huitong with you. I will bring you to find the true dragon's water. Asterisk, gurgle gurgle. Asterisk Qin Chuan, who was sitting beside the pool, finally let out a long sigh of relief when he saw Huitong soaked in the pool and his complexion gradually returning to normal. He really didn't expect Huitong to be saved by the true dragon's water that had been tainted by the Zergs. I did not expect there to be so much true dragon's water here. Yao Feng looked at Huitong, who was soaking in the pool, and said to Qin Chuan, If this was tens of thousands of years ago, Huitong would be lucky if he could even get a drop of true dragon's water, let alone soaking his entire body in it. However, I just checked carefully. The purity of this true dragon's water seems to be a little low. Its effect is much worse than pure true dragon's water. Luckily, there is enough of it to make up for the lack of quality. Qin Chuan smiled. It's good that we can save Senior Huitong's life. It's not just saving his life. Yao Feng said enviously. Perhaps he can use this opportunity to transform into a true dragon. Qin Chuan was a little surprised. If he knew that the true dragon's water was so effective, he would have saved some of it. However, when he thought about the countless Zerg eggs that were soaked in it, he did not mind. All right, let's talk about what you experienced. Yao Feng looked at Qin Chuan. What happened? Qin Chuan smiled and said to Yao Feng, Your Majesty, it's a long story. I'll make it simple. Qin Chuan did not hide anything. He started for what he saw when he closed his eyes. He told Yao Feng everything that happened. Other than the runic sword and the little armored dragon, he did not hide anything else. In fact, there was no need to hide anything else. After hearing Qin Chuan's words, Yao Feng fell silent for a moment. She then said to Qin Chuan, If that's the case, the extinction of the dragon race was related to that purple eyeball. Qin Chuan nodded and said, That's right. If it wasn't for the Golden Light Seal, I would have died long ago. Although I'm not sure where the eyeball came from, it must be something extremely important to Zerg. Otherwise, Zerg wouldn't have sent someone as powerful as Feng Te to hide here to look for the eyeball. In the end, although we didn't destroy the eyeball, we did severely injure it. That's something. Yao Feng looked at Qin Chuan and said, You, on the other hand, I didn't expect Feng Te to die in such a special way. Qin Chuan grinned and said, I can only say that I was lucky. If I wasn't, I wouldn't have survived until now. Yao Feng said to Qin Chuan, Let's find a safe place to release Feng Te after we get out of here. I think Huitong and I can kill him together. If they kept Feng Te alive, he would become a threat sooner or later. It was better to get rid of him as soon as possible. Qin Chuan agreed wholeheartedly with Yao Feng's suggestion. The golden bottle was a great treasure to him. It would be a waste to use it to trap Feng Te. It was better to get rid of Feng Te as soon as possible. Chapter 610. Qin Chuan, if you don't have the water of the true dragon, are you really willing to use your heart's blood to save him? Hu Shao, who had been silent all this while, suddenly opened his mouth and asked Qin Chuan such a subtle question. Hearing this question, Qin Chuan chuckled and said, "Although it's a bit pretentious, I still have to answer you seriously. If I don't have the water of the true dragon, I will use my heart's blood to save Senior Huitong. It's not because I'm kind, but because Senior Huitong is worth it." Although Qin Chuan and Huitong had only known each other for a day, he was really willing to use his heart's blood to save Huitong's life. Hu Xiao could tell that Qin Chuan wasn't lying. He was telling the truth. Hu Xiao looked at Qin Chuan with a complicated expression. He then looked at Yao Feng and said, "Your Majesty, I want to withdraw from the prince consort selection this time." Hearing this, Yao Feng wasn't surprised. He looked deeply at Hu Xiao and said, "If you withdraw now, you won't have another chance." Hu Xiao nodded and said in a low voice, "From strength to temperament to other aspects, I have to admit that I'm not as good as Qin Chuan. There's no point in continuing this competition." Hu Xiao wasn't someone who gave up easily. However, from what Qin Chuan had experienced after entering Dragon's Valley, the gap between him and Qin Chuan was too big. "Qin Chuan, do you have any objections?" Yao Feng turned to Qin Chuan and said, "If you don't have any objections, I'll announce the final result when we go back." Qin Chuan grinned when he heard that. He said to Yao Feng, "Your Majesty, can I change the way I address you now?" Even with Yao Feng's calm mind, he couldn't help but have a dark expression when he heard Qin Chuan's words. He coldly snorted and said to Qin Chuan, "It's too early to change your mind. At most, it's just an engagement. If you want to get married, wait until you reach the nascent soul stage." For cultivators, the primordial yang body and the primordial yin body were still relatively important. If they were broken too early, it would have a certain impact on their future cultivation. However, once they reached the nascent soul stage, this impact would be negligible. Yes, you're right." Qin Chuan smiled and looked at Yao Feng. He was already treating Yao Feng as his father-in-law. Seeing Qin Chuan and Yao Feng's conversation, Hu Xiao sighed. If it was him, even if he was Yao Feng's son-in-law, he wouldn't dare to talk to Yao Feng so casually. Qin Chuan's true nature was perhaps what Yao Feng liked about him. Perhaps what Yao Feng liked about Qin Chuan the most was his true personality. "Qin Chuan, does our previous agreement still stand?" Hu Xiao looked at Qin Chuan with a strange expression. "I want to follow you and see how you achieve your dreams." Qin Chuan laughed and walked to Hu Xiao's side. He extended his hand and said sincerely, "Welcome to my team." "Team?" Hu Xiao asked curiously. "Do you have a lot of people like me around you?" Qin Chuan nodded and said with a smile, "We're a team, brothers, and friends. When we have the chance to meet in the future, I'll introduce you to them. However, before that, I have a question for you. Do you have a way to disguise yourself as a Yao clan member? I'll definitely return to the Star Dragon Federation in the future. When that time comes, you'll definitely have to come with me." Hu Xiao nodded and said to Qin Chuan, "Such a small matter naturally won't be difficult for me." Seeing Qin Chuan and Hu Xiao with their arms around each other's shoulders, Yao Feng couldn't help but reveal a gratified expression. After so many years, he hadn't seen the peaceful coexistence of humans and Yao clan for a long time. As expected of your son, Huitong woke up earlier than Yao Feng expected. Seeing Huitong lying in the pool with his eyes open, Qin Chuan asked with concern, "Senior Huitong, how are you doing right now?" Hearing Qin Chuan's words, Huitong slowly turned his head and looked at Qin Chuan. His expressionless face gradually revealed an extremely complicated expression. He looked at Qin Chuan and softly said, "I'm only a Yalong species, a Jiao dragon. I don't have the right to be soaked in the true dragon's water in my life." Qin Chuan smiled and said to Huitong, "Senior, the situation back then was critical. This was the only way to save your life. Furthermore, the current Dragon Valley is no longer the Dragon Valley of the past. There's no need to continue following those rules." Huitong slowly sat up and lightly shook his head. He said to Qin Chuan, "There are some rules that you can choose not to follow, but I can't not follow them." As he spoke, Huitong stood up from the pool and came before Qin Chuan. He knelt before Qin Chuan on one knee and offered the dragon orb with both hands. He said in a low voice, "I, Huitong, am willing to follow the Dragon Master for the rest of my life. I will do my best until I die. Seeing Huitong bow to him, Qinchuan quickly said, No, no. Senior, don't be like this. Qinchuan, you're the only true dragon walking in the world right now. You are also the only candidate to inherit the Dragon Master position. Please don't refuse. Huitong looked at Qinchuan with a deep gaze. The dragon race cannot be without a master. Please accept the dragon orb. Qinchuan was in a difficult position. He never wanted to be the dragon master. Yao Feng, who was standing to the side, saw the situation and said to Qinchuan, Qinchuan, just accept it. Otherwise, he will commit suicide later. Qinchuan was shocked. He didn't understand and asked, why would he commit suicide? Huitong is a flood dragon. According to the laws of the dragon race, he doesn't have the right to soak himself in the true dragon pool. Although he didn't make the decision himself, he did go against the laws of the dragon race. According to the laws, he should be executed. However, if you inherit the position of Dragon Master and order him to soak himself in the true dragon pool, then you won't be breaking the rules. Do you understand? Hearing Yao Feng's explanation, Qinchuan looked at Huitong in shock and asked, Is that really the case? Huitong looked at Yao Feng and then nodded at Qinchuan. That's right. If you don't want to inherit the position of Dragon Master, then soaking myself in the true dragon pool will be a capital offense. When Qinchuan heard this, he helplessly glanced at the dragon pearl in Huitong's hands. He sighed and said, Then there should be no problem with me being the Dragon Lord, right? After that, Qinchuan took the dragon orb from Huitong's hands. The warm touch made Qinchuan feel like he was soaking in a hot spring. He couldn't help but look like he was enjoying it. Huitong's gaze was filled with excitement as he looked at Qinchuan. He said respectfully, Greetings, Dragon Lord. Chapter 611. Senior, I will be the Dragon Lord, but don't call me Dragon Lord. I like it. Just call me Qinchuan. Qinchuan looked at Huitong. He was afraid that Huitong would talk to him about some rules, so he added, This is an order. Huitong had no choice but to swallow the words he was about to say. He changed his tone and said, Yes, I understand. Don't call me that. Just me. Qinchuan bitterly smiled. I am really not used to this. Huitong moved his lips, but he still nodded in the end. I understand. After solving the problem of how to address himself, Qinchuan curiously asked Huitong, How do I use this Dragon Ball? Facing Qinchuan's question, Huitong shook his head and said, I don't know how to use the Dragon Ball. I have been carefully storing the Dragon Ball in my body all these years. I will only take it out on the day of sacrifice. Maybe Master Green Dragon knows how to use the Dragon Ball. Hearing Huitong's words, Qinchuan frowned and said, Then it seems that I can only temporarily keep it in my stomach like you. Qinchuan did not dare put something as important as the Dragon Ball in his storage ring. He had to keep it close to him to be at ease. After putting the Dragon Ball in his body, Qinchuan asked Huitong, Senior, are you willing to leave Dragon Valley with me? Huitong smiled and replied, Now that you are the Dragon Lord, I am a citizen of Dragon Valley. Naturally, I will follow wherever the Dragon Lord goes. That is great. Qinchuan excitedly waved his fist and said to Huitong, After we deal with Feng Te, we will leave this place. Rumble. Qinchuan looked into the distance. His expression was nervous and expectant. With Yao Feng and Huitong working together, it should be easy for them to kill a heavily injured Feng Te. Hu Xiao sensed the terrifying aura coming from the front and side. Whether it's His Majesty or that senior, their auras are much stronger than my father's. Even the injured Feng Te's aura is much stronger than my father's. Qinchuan chuckled when he heard that. He said to Hu Xiao, If His Majesty isn't strong enough, how can he intimidate the 10 royal tribes? What you said makes sense. Hu Xiao nodded gently. I know my father's character very well. If Your Majesty was not strong enough, my father might not be as obedient as he is now. The stronger Her Majesty is, the more I feel that those demon kings we met at the Heavenly Phoenix Plains are trash. Qinchuan grinned. Although my cultivation level is low, I really look down on those demon kings. In Qinchuan's opinion, Although Sky Crane and Blood Sparrow were also demon kings, they were only slightly stronger than normal demon commanders. Compared to the truly powerful demon kings, they were nothing. Perhaps they would only have the chance to hear the name of the demon king. They would not even have the right to see the demon king. Just as Qin Chuan and Hu Xiao were talking, Yao Feng and Hui Tong suddenly appeared in front of them. Yao Feng returned the golden bottle and the cork to Qin Chuan. He said to Qin Chuan, "We have already dealt with Feng Te. We will return this bottle to you." Qin Chuan took the bottle and smiled. "With the two seniors taking care of things, I can rest assured. If there is nothing else, let's go back." Yao Feng glanced at Hui Tong and said to him, "After we leave, follow Qin Chuan. Don't mess around in the demon realm." Hui Tong glanced at Yao Feng and replied, "As long as no one wants to harm Qin Chuan, I will not easily make a move." Yao Feng trusted Hui Tong's character. Since Hui Tong said that he wouldn't act recklessly, then he wouldn't act recklessly. Thus, Yao Feng was relieved. After all, Hui Tong's strength had increased greatly. If he wanted to act recklessly in the demon realm, then Yao Feng might not be Hui Tong's opponent. Qin Chuan also understood Yao Feng's meaning. Yao Feng was definitely worried that Hui Tong would make a move on the Flood Dragon King tribe because of the Black Flood Dragon King. If Hui Tong really wanted to make a move on the Flood Dragon King tribe, would Yao Feng interfere or not? Therefore, some things were agreed upon from the start. It was a good thing for everyone. In the Heavenly Beast Temple, everyone looked at the screen that had already turned black. Then, they looked at the dragon throne that only Snow Autumn was sitting on. Their expressions were very strange. Not long ago, they saw Yao Feng open the passage to Dragon Valley with their own eyes. If there was no special reason, Yao Feng would not suddenly go to Dragon Valley. In their opinion, Yao Feng must have other methods to know what was going on in Dragon Valley. They were the only ones who were kept in the dark. "Big cousin, will Qin Chuan be okay?" Ma Jiawen said to Lion Duke with a worried tone. "Even His Majesty has entered Dragon Valley. I keep feeling that there is some danger in Dragon Valley." Lion Duke pursed his lips and said to Ma Jiawen, "There is no use for us to worry here. Just wait patiently. No matter if something happens or not, it is fate." If he was at the side of Qin Chuan, then naturally he would do his best to protect Qin Chuan's safety. But now he and Qin Chuan were in different space. So even if he was worried, it was useless. Since that was the case, why should he make himself feel so uncomfortable? Just when everyone was discussing spiritedly because of Yao Feng's sudden departure, suddenly a transmission channel appeared in the hall. After that, Qin Chuan and others walked out one after another. Seeing Qin Chuan followed behind Yao Feng and walked out of the transmission channel, Yao Rao's worried heart finally relaxed, and her face again exposed a happy smile. And when someone was happy, naturally there would be someone who was worried. Qin Chuan and Hu Xiao came back alive, but he had disappeared. Shui Gui waited until Yao Feng closed the transmission channel again, but he didn't appear. His complexion instantly became unsightly and couldn't help but ask Yao Feng, "Your Majesty, why don't I see the heir of Fox King clan Shui?" Hearing Shui Gui, everyone's face exposed a trace of pondering expression. The heir of other clans had come back, but he didn't come back. This was definitely an accident. Perhaps Yao Feng's sudden departure was because something happened to Shui. Facing Shui Gui's question, Yao Feng indifferently looked at her and said, "You want to look for Shui? Then I will let you see him." While speaking, Yao Feng opened his storage ring, then threw a rotten corpse into the hall, then said in cold voice, "This is the Shui you want to see." Looking at the corpse in the hall, Shui Gui's complexion changed again and again. Even if he had turned into ashes, she would still be able to recognize him. But she really couldn't see how this corpse was related to Shui. Just as everyone was puzzled, Yao Feng dropped a bomb on them. He said in a deep voice, "The crown prince of the Fox King tribe, Shui, has been possessed by a bug tribe powerhouse. He's already dead. Now, I'm throwing the corpse of the bug tribe powerhouse in front of you." Chapter 612. An Insectoid Expert. Possessed. Yao Feng's words exploded in everyone's ears like a bolt of lightning. Everyone could not help but exclaim in shock. They looked at the corpse on the ground again and confirmed that it was the corpse of an insectoid after a careful examination. In other words, the real Shui, he had died a long time ago. How is this possible? Returning Snowy's face instantly turned pale. He could not believe that the snowy river he had spent so much time with was actually an insectoid powerhouse who had been possessed. Nothing is impossible in this world. Yao Feng looked at Snow Return calmly, then at the crowd. I suspect that Zerg has accomplices who are hiding among you. Everyone's face turned pale when they heard Yao Feng's words. They looked at the people around them differently, especially the Black King Drake. His face was extremely dark. He did not expect Feng Te to die just like that. Didn't he say that he could defeat the Shifter King? Didn't he say that he would bring back the true dragon's inheritance? It was all a lie. The Black King Drake snorted and cursed in his heart. Feng Te is such an idiot. I thought you were powerful. Fortunately, this prince is quick-witted and hasn't done that thing yet. Otherwise, I'm afraid I would have died here today. Your Majesty, please investigate this thoroughly. Tiger King was the first to step forward. He said in a deep voice, Zerg is the Shifter realm's biggest enemy. We have to be careful. The others agreed when they saw Tiger King asking for a thorough investigation. They wanted Yao Feng to investigate the Shifter race's spy. Yao Feng waved his hand to signal everyone to be quiet. He waited until everyone quieted down before he said, I will send someone to investigate the Zerg spy. There's no need to make such a big fuss. I'm only telling you this because I want to remind you not to trust anyone easily. At the same time, don't think that you're good at hiding. Everyone's expression changed when they heard Yao Feng's words. There's another thing. Yao Feng looked at everyone and said, in the previous test, Qin Xuan found 2 Demon King's tokens at the same time. Shui He is dead, and Hu Shao was unable to find the Demon King's token. According to the rules of the test, only Qin Xuan will win. Everyone was stunned for a moment when they heard this, but they quickly came back to their senses. If that was the case, wouldn't the only candidate for the Prince Consort be Qin Xuan? In other words, Qin Xuan had already won. On the high platform, hearing Yao Feng's words, Yao Rao couldn't help but jump up and said with pleasant surprise, Father Emperor, is what you said true? Seeing Yao Rao's excited expression, the expression on everyone's face became somewhat strange. As a princess, even if you like Qin Xuan, you shouldn't express it so obviously, right? This would make Hu Shao lose a lot of face. However, Hu Shao didn't have any reaction to this because his heart was no longer in this aspect. What he wanted to do the most now was to experience the wider world. The rules were set long ago, and no one raised any objection at that time. Now, according to the rules, Qin Xuan has indeed won. Yao Feng calmly looked at Yao Rao and said, Ro-er, pay attention to your bearing. Hearing Yao Feng's reminder, the expression on Yao Rao's face immediately became somewhat bashful. She somewhat embarrassedly looked at Qin Xuan, then said to Yao Feng in a gentle and soft voice, Father Emperor is right. Daughter will pay attention. Even though Yao Rao had restrained herself a lot, but the smile on her face was still hard to conceal. If not for the fact that there were too many people in the main hall, then she really wished to immediately jump up and give Qin Xuan a big hug. She had already thrown away all the modesty of a woman to the back of her head. Tiger King stood below the platform, and looking at Hu Zhao's calm expression, he couldn't help but somewhat helplessly sigh. From that day, when Hu Zhao said those incomprehensible words to him, he had already seen that Hu Zhao's mind was no longer in this election. Today's loss was also within his expectation. No matter what you want to do, Father Emperor will support you. The selection had already come to an end, and no one was paying attention to it anymore. Now, finding Zerg's spy had become the most urgent matter, and also the matter that everyone was most concerned about. But this had nothing to do with Qin Xuan. He had already done what he should do, and now he was preparing to return to Star Dragon Federation. Qin Xuan, why are you in such a hurry to go back? Looking at Qin Xuan, Yao Rao was somewhat reluctant to part with him. This election had just ended less than a day ago, and Qingchuan already wanted to leave. Wasn't it a bit too early? I also don't want to leave so early, but I really have a very important matter to do. Qingchuan was somewhat helpless. He had already left Star Dragon Federation for a very long time, and it was time for him to return, not to mention he still had to go back to find Azure Dragon Song how to consult about Dragon Balls. Thinking about this matter, Qingchuan felt somewhat strange. Along the way, he had inexplicably changed from a human race to the Dragon Lord of Dragon Race. Even TV series didn't dare to act like this. I know, you're talking about Dragon Balls, right? I also want to go with you to Star Dragon Federation to take a look, but Father Emperor doesn't allow it. Yaorao was very unhappy. She also wanted to go to Star Dragon Federation to experience the scenery of human world, but Yao Feng didn't allow it. Now, even if she wanted to secretly leave Heavenly Demon Mountain, it was impossible. Your identity is different. If you go to Star Dragon Federation and expose your identity, it will be too dangerous. Qingchuan said to Yaorao with a smile, "We will meet again in the future." Humph. Yaorao was still unhappy. Then how are you going to compensate me? Qingchuan didn't know whether to laugh or cry, then said to Yaorao, "Then I will give you a gift as compensation." Finished speaking, Qingchuan took out a small gift box which he had prepared long ago from his storage ring and handed it over to Yaorao, then said to Yaorao, "I hope you will like it." Yaorao didn't expect that Qingchuan would actually prepare a gift for her. Her face suddenly revealed a pleasantly surprised expression, then very curiously asked, "What is inside?" Qingchuan faintly smiled. "Won't you know once you open it?" Yaorao reached out and took the small gift box, then somewhat expectantly opened the small gift box. When she saw a string of somewhat rough-looking bracelet inside, she couldn't help but was startled. Seeing Yaorao was startled, Qingchuan somewhat awkwardly touched his nose, then said to Yaorao, "This is a bone that fell off from my body when I was injured. I polished it a bit, but it is not very fine. Thank you for your gift. I like it very much." Yaorao raised her eyes and looked at Qingchuan, then extended her right hand in front of Qingchuan and said, "Help me wear it." Having heard what was said, Qingchuan somewhat curiously asked, "This is made of bone. Don't you dislike it?" "I like it very much." Yaorao earnestly looked at Qingchuan and said, "During the time we are apart, it will replace you to accompany me." Chapter 613. At the border of the heavenly demon plains, Qingchuan stood on the ground and looked back at the heavenly demon mountains in the distance. His face was full of reluctance. "What's wrong? You don't want to leave?" Lion Duke teased Qingchuan with a smile. "If you don't want to leave, then stay. It's no big deal." Qingchuan shook his head and said to Lion Duke, "Now is not the time for romance. I have more important things to do." Zerg's threat was imminent, and he had yet to avenge his parents. He still had too many things to do. If he immersed himself in romance now, how could he accomplish anything great? "Good boy, I was right about you." Lion Duke patted Qingchuan's shoulder and laughed. "We are all cultivators. We have at least a few hundred years to live. If we don't do something great while we're still young and only think about romance, we won't accomplish anything great." Lion Duke admired Qingchuan's choice. If it didn't work hard now, it would be too late when Zerg invaded. Hui Tong, who was standing at the side, looked at Qingchuan and Lion Duke and nodded. He was right about Qingchuan. A person who could conquer a powerful demon with his charisma was indeed qualified to be the new Dragon Lord. He could see the hope of the dragon race rising again in Qingchuan. Qingchuan turned his head and looked forward. A tall young man was looking at them, waiting to walk with them. "The person we're waiting for is here. Let's go." Qingchuan looked at Hu Xiao, who was standing not far away, and said to everyone with a smile, "Let me introduce you to our new companion, the genius from the Tiger King division, Hu Xiao." Hearing Qingchuan's words, the corner of Lion Duke's mouth rose slightly, and he murmured, "Good boy, you're really good at swindling people. The most beautiful girl and the most outstanding young man in the demon realm have been taken by you. You're really worthy of being the person I chose." After a long journey of nearly a week, Qingchuan and the others finally left the demon realm. They passed through the mountain range and returned to the Star Dragon Federation. Qin Chuan originally wanted to visit Zhongchuyu in the mountain city before leaving. However, Zhongchuyu seemed to have been invited to a meeting and was not in the mountain range. Therefore, Qin Chuan and the others rested in the mountain city before returning to the Star Dragon Federation. Is this the Star Federation? It's even more barren than I thought. Hu Shao looked at the desolate land in front of him and sighed. I never thought that such a barren place could give birth to such an outstanding genius like you. He Qin Chuan's face. Hu Shao chuckled. I really can't wait to see what a city in the Star Dragon Federation looks like. Qin Chuan. Liu Duke looked at Qin Chuan and said with a complicated tone, now that I've returned to the Star Dragon Federation, my mission is complete. It's time to go. Qin Chuan heard this and looked at Liu Duke. Although Liu Duke escorted him all the way because he got 3 portions of the consul's thigh meat from him, he also got a lot of benefits because of Liu Duke. Liu Duke also helped him resolve the crisis one after another. If you think about it seriously, he should owe Liu Duke a lot. You didn't call me cousin for nothing. Liu Duke laughed and said to Qin Chuan, okay, don't say anything pretentious. You take this. When you need me, just crush it. I will naturally feel it and rush to your side as fast as possible. As he spoke, Liu Duke handed a round bone to Qin Chuan. Qin Chuan reached out and took the bone. Then, he asked Liu Duke, cousin, where do you plan to go next? The Star Dragon Federation is very big. I haven't explored all before. Now, of course, I'm going to continue the rest of the journey. Liu Duke laughed and looked at everyone. We'll meet again. Before he finished speaking, Liu Duke's figure disappeared in front of everyone's eyes. No one knew where he went. Qin Chuan sighed and said to Hu Shao and Hui Tong, let's go. We're going back to the Black Moon Combat Academy. Back in the Elf City, Qin Chuan looked at the unique cityscape of the Elf City. He felt very at ease and comfortable. It was as if he had returned home. Hu Shao, this is the Elf City. It used to be where the elves lived. It's one of the unique cities of the Star Dragon Federation. Sitting in the carriage, Qin Chuan introduced the city to Hu Shao, who was beside him. The scenery here is definitely unique. Hu Shao looked at the surrounding scenery through the car window and felt that everything he saw was particularly fresh. The hearty laughter and enthusiastic cheers of the people made him not feel lonely in a foreign land at all. Instead, he was eager to join in and become a member of the crowd. The scenery here is very beautiful. While Hu Shao was admiring the scenery, Hui Tong was looking around to see if there were any dangerous people around. After confirming that there was no one in the Elf City that could threaten Qin Chuan, he turned to Qin Chuan and asked, Qin Chuan, are we going to return to the Black Moon Combat Academy? Qin Chuan smiled and said to Hui Tong, Senior, our first stop is the Dragon Spirit Lake. I'll take you to see Senior Song Hao. Hearing Qin Chuan mention Azure Dragon Song Hao, Hui Tong's face couldn't help but reveal a look of anticipation. Thousands of years had passed, and to be able to see a character from the previous generation was a very lucky thing for him. After admiring the scenery of the Elf City, Qin Chuan went to the Black Moon Combat Academy's office to borrow a flying shuttle. He took Hui Tong and Hu Shao to the Dragon Spirit Lake. When the sky was about to turn dark, they finally arrived at the Dragon Spirit Lake. This is the Dragon Spirit Lake. Qin Chuan looked at the sparkling lake in front of him and said to Hui Tong, Senior Song Hao is at the bottom of the lake. I can already feel Lord Azure Dragon's aura. Let's go. Hui Tong couldn't wait to see Song Hao, but Qin Chuan was the Dragon Lord. He had to follow by Qin Chuan's side. If Qin Chuan didn't move, he couldn't move either. Qin Chuan smiled and looked at Hu Shao. He said to Hu Shao, let's go down together. I'll take you to see the great senior of the demon realm. As he spoke, Qin Chuan stepped into the Dragon Spirit Lake and released his aura, indicating his arrival to Song Hao. The moment Qin Chuan released his aura, a huge suction force appeared at the bottom of the Dragon Spirit Lake. It pulled Qin Chuan's body towards the bottom of the lake. Hui Tong and Hu Shao didn't resist and allowed the lake water to sweep them towards the bottom. Chapter 614. Walala. At the bottom of the Dragon Spirit Lake, Song Hao looked deeply at Qin Chuan and the other two who were slowly floating over. His gaze only swept past Qin Chuan and Hu Shao before locking on a Hui Tong. Hui Tong looked at Song Hao, who was chained at the bottom of the Dragon Spirit Lake. He couldn't help but reveal a sorrowful expression. He said to Song Hao with a hoarse voice, "Junior, Hui Tong greets Lord Azure Dragon." Looking at Hui Tong, who knelt on one knee before him, Song Hao's golden eyes revealed a trace of confusion. He said in a low voice, "I don't remember where I have seen you before, but your aura seems familiar." Hui Tong immediately said to Song Hao, 9,000 years ago, when my lord inherited the position of the divine beast Azure Dragon, Junior was fortunate enough to see my lord at close range." Hearing Hui Tong's explanation, Song Hao's eyes suddenly lit up. He said in disbelief, "You came from Dragon Valley?" Hui Tong nodded and said with a choked voice, "My lord, Junior is the commander of the 2nd Imperial Guard of Dragon Valley." Song Hao asked Hui Tong emotionally, "What is the situation of Dragon Valley now? What about the Dragon Lord? Is Tsang Ming still alive?" Facing Song Hao's question, Hui Tong finally couldn't hold back his tears. He shook his head and replied, "They are all dead. Junior is the only survivor of Dragon Valley." "How is that possible? You are lying to me." Song Hao violently shook his body, and the black chains that bound his body rattled as they were pulled, showing signs of breaking. However, at this moment, an inexplicable force suddenly appeared, and the chains slowly tightened, tightly binding Song Hao's body, making him unable to move. Seeing that Song Hao was unwilling to accept this reality, Hui Tong had a helpless expression. If he hadn't personally witnessed the changes in Dragon Valley, he wouldn't be willing to accept this reality either. "Senior, look at what this is." At this moment, Qin Chuan suddenly took out the Dragon Pearl and presented it before Song Hao. Song Hao stopped his crazy actions and stared at the Dragon Pearl. After a long time, he said while panting, "This is the Dragon Pearl, the symbol of the Dragon Lord." "That's right, the Dragon Balls." Qin Chuan looked at Song Hao with a complicated gaze and said to Song Hao, "This junior was fortunate enough to enter the Dragon's Valley at that time. Due to some special reasons, I became the new Dragon Lord, but this junior was only a temporary replacement. Now that the Dragon Orb is in front of Senior, this junior is willing to return the Dragon Orb to Senior and let Senior succeed the position of Dragon Lord." As early as when he was in the Demon Realm, Qin Chuan had already thought about it. When he came back and sought Song Hao, he would hand over the Dragon Pearl to Song Hao and let Song Hao succeed the position of Dragon Lord. Compared to him, Song Hao was more suitable for the position of Dragon Lord. When Hui Tong heard Qin Chuan's words, he was shocked. He said to Qin Chuan, "Qin Chuan, you are the new Dragon Lord?" Song Hao suddenly approached Qin Chuan. A pair of golden vertical pupils stared straight at Qin Chuan. He asked again, "You are the new Dragon Lord?" Facing the terrifying aura from Song Hao, Qin Chuan reluctantly nodded and replied, "That's right. I am the new Dragon Lord." Hearing Qin Chuan's affirmative answer, Song Hao fell silent. He just stared at Qin Chuan. After a long time, he said to Qin Chuan in a deep voice, "The matter of Dragon Lord is not to be trifled with. Since you have succeeded the position of Dragon Lord, then don't casually say that you will give it to someone else." Qin Chuan hesitated, but no buts. Song Hao interrupted Qin Chuan's words. "If it was before, you probably wouldn't be qualified to become Dragon Lord. But now, you do have the qualifications." Although Song Hao and Qin Chuan had not met many times, Song Hao could always see some changes in Qin Chuan every time they met. Especially this time, he could feel a huge change in Qin Chuan. From bloodline to strength to other aspects, Qin Chuan's improvement was almost comprehensive. Such a young man with such great potential was qualified to become the new Dragon Lord. As for Qin Chuan's identity, it was not a problem at all. Hearing Song Hao's words, Qin Chuan was stunned. He said in disbelief, "Senior, do you also support me to succeed the position of Dragon Lord?" Song Hao took a deep look at Qin Chuan and said to Qin Chuan, "You are indeed the most suitable person at the moment. In terms of identity, I should salute you when I see you. I don't deserve it. Qin Chuan quickly waved his hand. Senior, please don't be like this. I don't deserve it. You don't have to be so modest. When you advance to the nascent soul stage, I will naturally offer my loyalty to you. Song Hao looked at Qin Chuan meaningfully. Work hard in your cultivation. I hope that day will come as soon as possible. Master Azure Dragon. Hui Tong, who was at the side, interrupted. Junior and Dragon Lord do not understand the Dragon Ball. Lord Azure Dragon, please teach Dragon Lord how to control the Dragon Ball. When Song Hao heard this, he subconsciously looked at the Dragon Pearl. As he looked at the dim Dragon Pearl, a look of sorrow flashed across his eyes. He really did not expect that the Dragon Clan would have declined to this extent after being trapped at the bottom of the Dragon Spirit Lake for 8,000 years. The Dragon Ball has endless uses. You must take good care of it. Song Hao looked at Qin Chuan again. A green light shot out from between his eyebrows and landed on Qin Chuan's forehead. A chant naturally appeared in Qin Chuan's mind. It was deeply rooted and couldn't be removed. Thank you, Senior. Qin Chuan looked at Song Hao gratefully. Junior will take good care of the Dragon Ball and do what a Dragon Lord should do. You can slowly learn the chant when you go back. Right now, I want to hear about what happened in Dragon Valley. Song Hao looked at Qin Chuan deeply and said to Qin Chuan, take your time. I want to listen for a while. Qin Chuan naturally didn't have any objections to Song Hao's request. He started from when he first entered Dragon Valley. He didn't miss a single detail. Song Hao just lay beside Qin Chuan and closed his eyes. He listened to Qin Chuan talk about what he experienced. He was so quiet that it was like he was sleeping. When Qin Chuan finished, Song Hao slowly opened his eyes and looked at Qin Chuan. He said in a low voice, Qin Chuan, your choice is correct. The evil eye must be destroyed. Qin Chuan heard this and asked curiously, that eyeball is called the evil eye? Zerg called it the sacred eye. We naturally call it the evil eye. Song Hao said to Qin Chuan, as a Dragon Lord, you should make fighting against Zerg your #1 priority. If Zerg doesn't die, we will never have a day of peace. Qin Chuan nodded solemnly. Although he didn't have much contact with Zerg, he clearly knew how big of a threat Zerg was to them. There was no way they could make peace with Zerg. One side had to be wiped out before the war would stop. Chapter 615. All right, the story is over. You guys can leave. Song Hao looked at everyone. I want to be alone for a while. Although Song Hao had already passively accepted the fact that the dragon race was almost extinct, it was still very difficult for him to completely calm his heart. He wanted to be alone for a while and slowly digest this sorrowful fact. Senior. Qin Chuan looked at Qin Chuan and said in a serious tone, this junior is not even 20 years old this year, but I'm already a rank 3 array master. Hearing Qin Chuan's words, Song Hao looked at Qin Chuan with a subtle gaze and asked in a deep voice, what do you want to say? I want to say that this junior has the confidence to become a rank 4 array master within 10 years and a rank 5 array master that only appeared during the Great Chaotic Era within 30 years. Qin Chuan cast his gaze toward the pitch-black chains that twined around Song Hao's body and said very solemnly, Junior has the confidence to break this immortal prison talisman array within 50 years and rescue Senior from here. You have the heart. Song Hao looked deeply at Qin Chuan. I will wait for that day to come. After leaving the Dragon Spirit Lake, Qin Chuan looked at the calm lake behind him with a complicated gaze and said to Hui Tong, it's been over 8,000 years. Senior Song Hao must have been in a lot of pain. Hui Tong lightly nodded and sighed. I originally thought that guarding Dragon Valley alone was the most painful and lonesome thing in the world. However, compared to Lord Azure Dragon's experience, I actually feel that I've been living a very happy life these past few years. Let's go. The next time we come, I hope that I can bring some good news to Senior Song Hao. Qin Chuan looked at the Dragon Spirit Lake one last time and said to everyone, let's return to the academy. Qin Chuan's return to the Black Moon Combat Academy did not alarm many people. Only Lu Zi's group came to welcome them. Qin Chuan. The moment she saw Qin Chuan's familiar figure, Lu Zi could not suppress the longing in her heart for Qin Chuan. She flew into Qin Chuan's arms and tightly hugged Qin Chuan. Qin Chuan, I missed you so much. Although it had only been a few months, to Lu Zi, it felt like decades. Qin Chuan laughed and looked at Chen Changxing long and by. He then said to Lu Zi, who was in his arms, Hu Xiao, who was standing beside Qin Chuan, couldn't help but frown when he saw Qin Chuan and LVZ hugging each other. Qin Chuan was now the son-in-law of the heavenly demon temple. Wasn't it inappropriate for him to hug other girls like this? Maybe it was just a hug between friends? Who are these two? Chen Changxing looked at Hui Tong and Hu Xiao curiously. He said to Qin Chuan, Boss, why don't you introduce them? Qin Chuan laughed and introduced them to everyone. This is Senior Hui Tong. This is Hu Xiao. From now on, Hu Xiao will be our partner. Hu Xiao stepped forward and said to everyone, Hello, everyone. I am Hu Xiao from Jia Mountain. Before he came to the Star Dragon Federation, Hu Xiao had already arranged his identity. His new identity was a human cultivator from Jia Mountain. You are also from Jia Mountain. Chen Changxing smiled. A while ago, a golden core cultivator came to our school. He said he was waiting for Boss to come back. He also came from Jia Mountain. Hearing Chen Changxing's words, Qin Chuan's eyes suddenly lit up. He asked, Is that person called Shiyu? Yes, it's Shiyu. I arranged for him to stay in the school's guest house. Chen Changxing said to Qin Chuan. At first, I didn't believe him. But when he took out the consul's leg meat and showed it to me, I believed him. Then, Chen Changxing looked at Hui Tong and asked curiously, Is this senior also a golden core cultivator you know from Jia Mountain? Chen Changxing, shut up. Long Xiao glared at Chen Changxing. Be polite to your senior. Facing Long Xiao's reprimand, Chen Changxing was confused. Was he not polite enough? He also had the same attitude toward Shiyu. Seeing the expression on Chen Changxing's face, Long Xiao helplessly whispered in Chen Changxing's ear, Idiot, this senior is a nascent soul cultivator. Hearing Long Xiao's words, Chen Changxing's expression suddenly became very interesting. He subconsciously turned to look at Hui Tong and blurted out in shock, Nascent soul cultivator? Long Xiao helplessly put her hand to her forehead. How could this idiot open his mouth and say that? Qin Chuan also looked at Chen Changxing helplessly and said, Your father is a nascent soul cultivator. Can you not be so useless as if you have never seen the world? In the past, Qin Chuan also felt that nascent soul cultivators were very powerful and mysterious. But during this period of time, he had come into contact with too many nascent soul cultivators and demon kings. He was already used to it. He really felt that there was nothing to be surprised about. Chen Changxing said incoherently, No, I'm not surprised because of this. Boss, you can kidnap a golden core cultivator, but how can you kidnap a nascent soul cultivator? Kidnap your sister. Qin Chuan rolled his eyes. This is called personal charm. Chen Changxing looked constipated. Hammer's personal charm? What kind of personal charm could kidnap a nascent soul cultivator? Forget it. I don't want to talk to you about this. Qin Chuan rolled his eyes at Chen Changxing and then said to Hui Tong, Senior, I will ask someone to take you to find a place to settle down. I will find you after I deal with some things. When Hui Tong heard this, he nodded and said to Qin Chuan, Just make the arrangements. When everyone saw that Hui Tong was so polite to Qin Chuan, their expressions became extremely surprised. Was this guy really a nascent soul cultivator? Aren't you being a little too respectful to a junior like Qin Chuan? Or were all the people in Jia Mountain so polite? After arranging for someone to take Hui Tong to rest, Qin Chuan said to everyone, Let's meet again later. I will go to the teacher to pay my respects. If you want to find Teacher Ning, you don't have to go, Lu Zi said to Qin Chuan. Teacher Ning is not in the school. He seems to have gone to attend a meeting. Hearing Lu Zi's words, Qin Chuan couldn't help but be slightly stunned. When he went to the mountain city to find Zhong Qiyu, he was also told that Zhong Qiyu had gone to attend a special meeting. Were they attending the same meeting? Since the teacher is not here, I will go to see the Grandmaster myself. Qin Chuan pondered for a moment and said to everyone, "Take Hu Xiao and find a place to wait for me. I will be back soon. By the way, call Shi Yu." After arranging these things, Qin Chuan turned and left. Bai Yu looked at Qin Chuan's back as he left. She pursed her lips slightly and whispered, "He seems to have changed." Hearing Bai Yu's words, everyone was stunned. Qin Chuan had changed? People will grow. Lu Zi smiled slightly. As long as he is still Qin Chuan, nothing else matters. Chapter 616. This was Qin Chuan's second time coming to the Student Union's library, and it was also his first time coming here alone. Standing in front of the library, Qin Chuan felt a little conflicted. He didn't know if it was appropriate for him to come here alone, nor did he know if Ning Zhongtian would see him. Just as he was feeling confused, the library's door suddenly opened. Ning Zhongtian stood at the door, looking at him, and asked, "Since you're here, why don't you come in?" When Qin Chuan saw Ning Zhongtian's figure, he immediately greeted him respectfully. "Greetings, Grand Advisor." Ning Zhongtian sized up Qin Chuan with a subtle gaze. After a while, he said, "Your aura is more like that of Yao than before." Hearing Ning Zhongtian's words, Qin Chuan's expression became extremely interesting. He didn't know how to respond to Ning Zhongtian. Ning Zhongtian didn't seem to notice the change in expression on Qin Chuan's face. He turned around and walked into the library, asking as he walked, "What are you worried about?" Qin Chuan followed behind Ning Zhongtian into the library. He asked Ning Zhongtian in a low voice, "Grand Advisor, you don't reject this matter? Why would I reject it?" Ning Zhongtian didn't even turn his head. "If I rejected this matter, do you think you'd be able to live until now?" Qin Chuan pursed his lips and said in a low voice, "In many people's eyes, humans and Yao are natural enemies. I have Yao blood running through my veins, so I'm no longer a pure human. If news of this gets out, I'll definitely be despised and rejected by everyone. I won't be able to establish myself in the Star Dragon Federation anymore." Ning Zhongtian turned to look at Qin Chuan and chuckled. "Do you think there are very few people like you?" Qin Chuan looked at Ning Zhongtian in surprise. "Are there other people like me who have Yao blood running through their veins despite being human? Although the human race and the demon race are at odds with each other, this has only happened in the past few thousand years. Long ago, the human race and the demon race were friends, and there have been cases of humans and demons intermarrying." Ning Zhongtian said to Qin Chuan indifferently, "There are some things that you don't need to overcomplicate." Ning Zhongtian walked to the table and sat down. He said to Qin Chuan, "Come, sit." Qin Chuan slowly walked to the opposite side of Zhongtian and sat down. He asked Ning Zhongtian curiously, "Grand Advisor, do you think it's possible for humans and Yao to return to the harmonious state they used to be? To resist foreign aggression?" Zhongtian said Zhongtian. Ning Zhongtian replied, "If humans can't destroy the demons, and the demons can't destroy humans, then when the insectoids invade, humans and demons will definitely join forces to resist the insectoids. Compared to the grudge between humans and the insectoids, what's the little friction between humans and demons?" Qin Chuan looked at Ning Zhongtian with a subtle expression. He said to Ning Zhongtian in a low voice, "But some people don't think so." Hearing Qin Chuan's words, Ning Zhongtian glanced at Qin Chuan and said, "You're worrying too much. When the insectoids invade, if anyone dares to destroy the alliance between us humans and demons for their own selfish reasons, someone will definitely kill them." Qin Chuan looked at Ning Zhongtian deeply. "I hope so. You came to me this time because of the battle armor, right?" Ning Zhongtian placed a circular mechanical box the size of a thumb in front of Qin Chuan. "Your battle armor has been forged. It's in here." Qin Chuan looked at the mechanical box in front of him and asked excitedly, "It's done so quickly. It wasn't anything difficult." Ning Zhongtian said to Qin Chuan, "But you need to reach the golden core stage before you can pilot this battle armor." "Oh, right. Remember to find a battle armor training camp to learn how to pilot a battle armor." "Thank you, Grandmaster." Qin Chuan happily put away the mechanical box. "All right, what's the name of this battle armor?" You name it yourself. Ning Zhongtian said. I'm only in charge of forging. I don't care about anything else. Let's call it number 1. Qin Chuan smiled. My first battle suit will be called number 1. After naming the battle armor, Qin Chuan suddenly asked Ning Zhongtian, Grandmaster, after I came back, I heard that master went to a meeting. Did you know? Ning Zhongtian nodded. I know. They also invited me, but I didn't go. Qin Chuan asked curiously, what kind of meeting is this? It's a meeting called by the chairman of the Star Dragon Federation. Those who can attend this meeting are all nascent soul cultivators. Ning Zhongtian said indifferently. The nascent soul cultivators at the World Mountain have also received an invitation. You probably know that. Qin Chuan nodded and asked again, what's the purpose of a meeting that's targeted at nascent soul cultivators? It's about Zerg and also about the Qin family. Ning Zhongtian answered all the questions. Although Zerg's invasion hasn't happened yet, all the signs indicate that it's an imminent matter. We have to make corresponding arrangements as soon as possible. The Qin family has been receiving a lot of attention because of the carefree secret realm, so they can't be cleared of suspicion. The chairman of the Federation wants to use this meeting to deal with the Qin family. As for how to deal with it, I'm not sure. Qin Chuan couldn't help but be stunned. He didn't expect the Qin family's matter to drag on for so long. Logically speaking, with the Qin family's ability, the matter shouldn't have dragged on for so long. If the Qin family can't be cleared of suspicion, what will the consequences be? The chairman of the Federation won't allow any threat related to Zerg to exist in this world. He'd rather kill the wrong person than let him go. The Qin family will be annihilated. No one knows the situation better than I do. The one who betrayed the human race was Qin Haoshuan, not the Qin family. What's the use of knowing? The enemies of the Qin family may not be willing to know this. For them, this is an excellent opportunity to eradicate the Qin family. They won't miss it so easily. But they're killing innocent people. Are you worried about the Qin family? The library fell silent. Qin Chuan looked at Ning Zhongtian for a long time before saying, whether it's the Qin family, the Li family, or the Zhang family, it makes no difference to me. I'm just stating a fact. I don't mean anything else. Ning Zhongtian looked at Qin Chuan calmly and said, this is just my personal speculation. It hasn't happened, so you don't have to worry too much. The Qin family has been in the Star Dragon Federation for so many years. Although they have many enemies, they also have many friends. There will be people who will speak up for them. Moreover, this is a critical period. As a nascent soul cultivator, Qin Chongxiao is extremely important to the Star Dragon Federation. If it's not the last resort, the chairman of the Federation won't take tough measures against the Qin family. Qin Chuan nodded slightly and said to Ning Zhongtian, thank you for your advice, Grandmaster. Chapter 617. Star Dragon City. Zhong Qiyu sat in a coffee shop on the 300th floor, looking down at Star Dragon City under the clouds with a slightly complicated look. She sighed, is this Star Dragon City? Although I've heard of Star Dragon City, this is the first time I've come here. Ningya, who was sitting opposite Zhong Qiyu, also sighed when she heard this. She said softly, this is Star Dragon City, a place that people love and hate at the same time. Many years ago, I wanted to come here to find him and question him face to face, but I didn't expect that before I could make up my mind, I would receive the bad news of his death. Zhong Qiyu pursed her lips and whispered, this time, I don't plan to go back to GM Mountain in a short time. I'm going to find that person. Hearing Zhong Qiyu's words, Ningya frowned slightly and asked, who are you going to find? Shangwan Yuan Hao. Who else can it be? Zhong Qiyu looked at Ningya. I didn't have the strength in the past, but now I should be qualified to avenge him. Although Zhong Qiyu's face was expressionless, Ningya could see that Zhong Qiyu must be in a bad mood. If it weren't for the fact that she didn't know where Shangwan Yuan Hao was, Zhong Qiyu would have already gone to avenge him. He was already in the Yuanying realm at that time, but he was still killed. You should know that Shangwan Yuan Hao is not so easy to deal with. Ningya persuaded Zhong Qiyu. Don't be capricious and don't mess around, okay? If I'm not enough, there's still Uncle Zhong. Zhong Qiyu said lightly. If two people are not enough, there's still you. Don't tell me that you've let go and don't want to avenge him. I haven't let go, but I know myself, Ningya said seriously to Zhong Qiyu. Besides, this is what Qin Xuan wants to do. What do you mean? Zhong Qiyu frowned. You told Qin Xuan about this? Ningya nodded. Qin Xuan knows about Shangguan Yuanhao's existence. Are you crazy? Zhong Qiyu glared at Ningya and said coldly. You're harming Qin Xuan by telling him this. Do you want him to hit a rock with an egg and commit suicide? Qin Xuan won't be as irrational as you. Ningya retorted. Qin Xuan is no longer a child. Do you want to hide this from him forever? He will find out sooner or later. We can solve the problem first, and then tell him. Zhong Qiyu said in a low voice. What you're doing is only planting the seed of hatred in his heart. Perhaps his state of mind will be greatly affected because of this. Do you know that? I don't need you to teach me that. I'm Qin Xuan's teacher. I know what to do for him. You don't know anything. The two of them quarreled and glared at each other. Neither of them was willing to admit that their thoughts were wrong. Both of them insisted on their own opinions. All right, I don't want to quarrel with you about these meaningless things. Ningya took a deep breath and said to Zhong Qiyu, you want to find Qin Xuan to avenge him. I can understand and support you. However, you have to wait for Qin Xuan to grow up and do this with him. Speaking of this, Ningya added, if you don't want Qin Xuan to have regrets in his heart, you'd better do as I say. Are you threatening me? Zhong Qiyu snorted coldly. You know, I hate it when people threaten me. I'm thinking about Qin Xuan's future. As for you, you're thinking about your own selfishness. You know clearly in your heart whether I'm right or not. Ningya looked deeply at Zhong Qiyu. That's all I've said. Do as you see fit. I won't stop you. Buzz. Ningya and Zhong Qiyu's photon computers on the table vibrated at the same time. The Star Dragon Federation Supreme Council had sent an email inviting the two of them to attend a meeting at Star Dragon City's City Hall at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Seeing the content of the email, Ningya said to Zhong Qiyu, the meeting this time mainly revolves around the reappearance of Zerg. The Federation Supreme Council wants to join forces with Jie Shan to fight against the possible second invasion of Zerg. They also hope that Jie Shan can invite the Shifter race to join the alliance when necessary to fight against Zerg. The other thing is about the Qin family. The Qin family? Zhong Qiyu frowned slightly and asked, is it about Qin Haoshuan? That's right. When you were investigating Qin Xuan, you must have also investigated Qin Haoshuan. He was originally the successor of the Qin family and a well-known genius. However, in the carefree secret realm, he made the wrong choice and betrayed the human race to join Zerg. Because of him, the Qin family is now suspected of colluding with Zerg. In the past, the Qin family has been trying to find a way to prove their innocence. However, they couldn't produce any decent evidence, so the matter has been delayed until now. I don't care about the life and death of the Qin family. In fact, I can't wait for the Qin family to die. Zhong Qiyu said bluntly, no matter what happens to that woman's family, they don't deserve any sympathy. Can you not be so extreme? Ningya had a headache. There are good people in the Qin family, but there are also many innocent people. That's for you. As for me, no one in the Qin family is innocent. Zhong Qiyu snorted coldly. Let's not talk about the past for now. Just based on the fact that they wanted to set up Qin Xuan, it's impossible for me to help them. Whatever. Ningya had a headache. Let's go. Let's go to the meeting. If there was something that was worthy of the attention of all the important figures in the Star Dragon Federation, it would be the matter of the Black Moon Combat Academy's instructor, Ningya, advancing to the nascent soul stage. Ningya's advancement to the nascent soul stage didn't just mean that another top expert had appeared in the Star Dragon Federation. It must be known that Ningya herself was a 4th grade talisman array master and possessed the power to destroy the heavens and earth. Now that she had advanced to the nascent soul stage, Ningya's strength and threat level could be said to have risen to a whole new level. In addition, Ningya's teacher, Ning Zhongtian, was a well-known veteran nascent soul cultivator. In terms of strength, he could be ranked in the top 3 in the entire Star Dragon Federation. The influence of these two people was definitely not as simple as 1 plus 1 equals 2. Moreover, Ningya was the teacher of the recently popular genius, Qin Chuan. Furthermore, Qin Chuan was also involved with the Qin family, which had been in deep trouble recently. Ningya's attitude in today's meeting might affect many people's attitudes towards the Qin family. This made it difficult for many people who were hostile towards the Qin family to not pay attention to Ningya. It was also because of this that when Ningya and Zhong Chuyu appeared together in the city hall, they attracted the attention of everyone present. Those with low cultivation levels could only watch from afar, while the nascent soul cultivators all politely greeted Ningya, wanting to leave a good impression in front of Ningya. Chapter 6:18. They're very enthusiastic about you. Zhong Qiyu looked at the people who came to greet Ningya. The lowest realm among them was in the peak gold core realm. Ningya smiled and said to Zhong Qiyu, "They're not enthusiastic about me, but about the force I represent." Zhong Qiyu nodded gently and responded, "What you said makes sense. No matter where you and your teacher go, your influence is enough to get everyone's respect. They not only respect us, but they're also thinking about whether there's a way to get some benefits from us." Ningya sneered, "Don't think that these people are the rulers of aristocratic families or nascent soul cultivators. Their table manners are not much better than those others. A simple nascent soul cultivator might not be so noble in the eyes of these people. Only when you had benefits that they needed would these people be kind to you. However, after you lost your value, these people would immediately turn hostile." Although Ningya had not experienced these things, she had seen this kind of thing many times. "You see it very clearly." Zhong Qiyu chuckled. "When I was in Jia Mountain, many people came to ask for my hand in marriage. Do you know what they saw in me when they married me? They saw Uncle Zhong's loyalty to me. Marrying me is equivalent to marrying a nascent soul cultivator. Don't you think it's very profitable? Let's amend it. Now it's 2. Ningya teased. "Whoever marries you now will really make a big profit. Then wouldn't it be more profitable for whoever marries you?" Zhong Qiyu looked at Ningya. "Don't forget that the benefits you have are much greater than mine. Okay. You're almost 100 years old, but you're still thinking about marriage. Don't you feel ashamed?" Ningya chuckled. "Let's go to the conference room first." The conference room is the largest and highest standard conference room in the entire Star Dragon Federation. It's called the first conference room, but it's usually not open to the public. Under the guidance of the staff, Ningya and Zhong Qiyu arrived at the first meeting room of the city hall. The first meeting room was located on the 108th floor of the city hall and occupied the entire floor. When Ningya and Zhong Qiyu walked in, there were only a few dozen figures in the first meeting room. Without exception, these people were all high-ranking people in the Star Dragon Federation. The lowest cultivation base among them was at the peak of the Gold Core realm. Ningya and Zhong Chuyu's arrival attracted a lot of people's attention. As the two women who were in the limelight in the Star Dragon Federation and Jia Mountain recently, it was hard for people to not notice them. "Two beautiful ladies. I'm Luong from Jingchu." A middle-aged man in a black suit took the initiative to walk in front of Ningya and Zhong Chuyu and introduce himself to them. He was very polite and obviously wanted to leave a good impression in front of them. It turns out to be Mr. Luong from the Lu family of Jingchu. Ningya smiled and said to Luong, "Nice to meet you." Although Ningya said, "Nice to meet you," Luong didn't really think that Ningya was happy to meet him. He said to Ningya sensibly, "It's my honor to meet the famous Miss Ning and Miss Zhong here. I won't disturb you anymore. See you again if fate wills it." After saying this, Luong bowed slightly and then turned to leave. Looking at Luong's back, Zhong Qiyu gently raised her eyebrows and said to Ningya, "This person is very sensible. I'm afraid that those who are not sensible will not have the chance to come here." Ningya smiled and said to Zhong Qiyu, "Let's go. Let's find a place to sit down." As time went by, the first meeting room ushered in dozens of guests one after another. Most of them were the leaders of various aristocratic families and sections. Only a few were nascent soul cultivators. When there were less than 10 minutes before the official start of the meeting, there were already hundreds of people sitting in the first meeting room. Among them, there were nearly 30 nascent soul cultivators. Looking at those nascent soul cultivators present, Ningya whispered to Zhong Qiu, "I didn't expect there to be so many nascent soul cultivators in the Star Dragon Federation. Some of them are so old that their teeth have fallen out." Zhong Qiu looked around and said to Ningya, "In comparison, the foundation of the World Mountain is still too weak. There are no more than 10 nascent soul cultivators in the entire World Mountain. There are more than 20 nascent soul cultivators from the Star Dragon Federation present. Adding those who have hidden themselves, there are at least 50 nascent soul cultivators. Such a powerful force is enough to destroy this world. If they're not crazy, who would do such a thing to destroy the world?" Ningya smiled and was about to continue speaking when the first meeting room ushered in 3 new guests, which attracted the attention of everyone present. "They are here." Ningya looked at the direction of the door and said to Zhong Qiu, "Qin Chongxiao, Qin Yiming, and Qin Zhu of the Qin family." Hearing Ningya's words, Zhong Qiu's gaze on the 3 people of the Qin family suddenly changed from calm to indifferent. Her eyes focused on Qin Chongxiao, and she said in a deep voice, "He is the strongest person of the Qin family?" "On the surface, he is," Ningya whispered, "but I don't know if there are other strong people hiding in the Qin family. After all, the Qin family has been passed down for nearly 10,000 years. There's a high probability that there are ancient elders hiding in the family." Zhong Qiu was no stranger to the term ancient elders. Many powerful families and sects would have ancient elders who had lived for thousands or even tens of thousands of years. They could be said to be the trump card of trump cards. Unless there was a crisis of extinction, these ancient elders would not take action. Seeing that Zhong Qiu had been observing Qin Chongxiao, Ningya said to Zhong Qiu helplessly, "Don't mess around. Qin Chongxiao is a nascent soul cultivator in the middle stage. He is not someone we can deal with." "I know." Zhong Qiu turned her gaze to Ningya and frowned. "When did you become so cautious? This doesn't seem like the you I know." Ningya looked at Zhong Qiu helplessly and sighed. "If I was still in the Golden Core realm, I could act without any scruples. But now that I am a nascent soul cultivator, my every action is no longer purely representing myself. Not only do I have my teacher behind me, but I also have the entire Black Moon Combat Academy. How can I not be careful?" Who would have thought that after advancing to the nascent soul realm, Ningya, who had always run amok, seemed to have been shackled. She had to be careful everywhere, and her life was not as carefree as when she was in the Golden Core realm. Hearing Ningya's words, Zhong Qiu's face could not help but reveal a complicated expression. Sometimes the higher one stood, the more things they had to consider and the more restrictions they would face. This time, as a representative of the World Mountain, she had to be careful everywhere. Chapter 619. Zhong Qiu sighed and said to Ningya, "I'm the same as you. I'm here on behalf of the Gem Mountain, so I have to be careful everywhere. I can't offend the Star Dragon Federation, but I can't let the Gem Mountain suffer. This job is really tiring." Ningya looked at Zhong Qiu with a strange gaze and said, "I didn't see any cautiousness in your previous performance. With that arrogant and despotic look, those who didn't know would think that you were an old ghost in the soul formation stage." Zhong Qiu smiled bitterly and helplessly. "There are some things that I'm just saying." Ningya raised her eyebrows slightly and asked, "You're just saying that you're going to help him take revenge?" "That's true." Zhong Qiu's expression suddenly changed. "I can stay out of the Qin clan's matters, but Shangwan Yuanhao must be killed." Hearing Zhong Qiu's words, Ningya shook her head and didn't want to continue this topic. As long as Zhong Qiu didn't make things difficult for the Qin clan in the meeting later, she had nothing to worry about. After all, she and Qin Zhu were very good friends. It would be very difficult for her to be sandwiched between Zhong Qiu and Qin Zhu. As for taking revenge on Shangwan Yuanhao, it was up to Zhong Qiu. She had already said what she could say. If Zhong Qiu insisted on doing things her own way, she couldn't stop her. She couldn't tie Zhong Chuyu to her. Just as Ningya and Zhong Chuyu were talking, the Qin clan had already found a place to sit down. Suddenly, a strange voice sounded in the quiet first meeting room. This is the meeting place of the righteous people of the Star Dragon Federation and the Jia Mountain. We invite some traitors who have already betrayed the human race to leave here. As the voice fell, the entire first meeting room became silent. Everyone looked at the three people from the Qin clan who had just taken their seats. Their eyes were full of playfulness. Qin Yiming looked at the person who spoke indifferently and said indifferently, "Lu Chun, watch your mouth. You can eat whatever you want, but you can't speak whatever you want. Have you been living like a dog for so long that you can't even tell right from wrong?" Lu Chun was the head of the Lu family in Star Dragon City. Although the Lu family was not one of the four big families, their overall strength was not much weaker than the four big families. Normally, the Lu family and the Qin family did not interact much. Logically speaking, Lu Chun should not have taken the initiative to mock and ridicule Qin Chuan. However, Lu Chun did. It was obvious that someone was manipulating everything behind the scenes. And when Qin Yiming mocked Lu Chun for living like a dog, he was clearly mocking Lu Chun for being ordered around like a dog. Hearing Qin Yiming's words, Lu Chun coldly snorted and asked, "I'm talking about human traitors. Is your Qin family so eager to take the blame? It's not up to you to decide whether we are traitors or not." Qin Yiming looked deeply at Lu Chun and said, "Since you want to interfere in today's matter, you should be prepared to have your hands broken." Lu Chun did not respond to Qin Yiming. Instead, he looked at Qin Zhu and said with a smile, "General Qin, you have a great future in the military. Don't be dragged down by the people from the Qin clan. It's better to leave the Qin clan as soon as possible. In my opinion, the Qin clan is as blind as a bat. They did not nurture a super genius like Qin Chuan, and instead nurtured an inhumane human traitor. TSK, TSK, TSK. The Qin clan has a good hand, but plays it badly, right?" Hearing Lu Chen's words, Qin Yiming's face suddenly became gloomy. The thing he hated the most now was people comparing Qin Chuan and Qin Hao Xuan. "Lu Chun, if you want to make trouble with the Qin clan, do it with them. Don't drag my disciple into it." At this moment, Ningya suddenly spoke. She stared coldly at Lu Chun and then looked at everyone present. She said coldly, "The Qin clan is the Qin clan. Qin Chuan is Qin Chuan. I don't want to see anyone mixing them up." When everyone heard Ningya's words, their expressions became somewhat subtle. From Ningya's attitude, it was not difficult to see that the relationship between the Qin clan and Qin Chuan was still very stiff. Otherwise, Ningya would not have said such words in front of the Qin clan. Yes, Miss Ning is right. It was a slip of the tongue. I apologize." Lu Chun stood up with a smile and bowed to Ningya. He did not care about what Ningya had said to him just now. Compared to this, he cared more about the matter of Ningya cutting ties with the Qin clan. This was a great thing for them who wanted to attack the Qin clan. "Miss Ning." At this moment, Qin Yiming suddenly turned to look at Ningya. "Although you are Qin Chuan's teacher, you have no right to say such words on behalf of Qin Chuan. You know better than anyone whether Qin Chuan is a member of the Qin clan or not." "I do know very well." Ningya sneered and said, "In the past, the destitute Qin Chuan was not a member of the Qin clan. Now, the super genius Qin Chuan is someone the Qin clan wants. Am I right?" When everyone heard Ningya's mocking and ridiculing of Qin Yiming, they looked like they were watching a good show. Qin Yiming was really stupid. Did he think that he did not have enough enemies? Why did he have to provoke Ningya? Just when everyone wanted to see how Qin Yiming was going to defend the Qin clan, a new guest arrived at the first meeting room. What is everyone talking about? I think the atmosphere here is very lively. A figure in a dark green military uniform slowly walked into the first meeting room. He looked at everyone with a smile, appearing extremely casual. However, although this person appeared casual, everyone did not dare to be casual with him. One had to know that this was the strongest person on the surface of the Star Dragon Federation, the only Grand Marshal of the military, Mo Jun. The moment he saw Mo Jun appear, Qin Ju immediately stood up and respectfully said to Mo Jun, "This subordinate greets the Grand Marshal." General Qin, there's no need to be so polite. Mo Jun chuckled and said to Qin Ju, "I still have many details to discuss with you regarding the transformation of the 10th Army into a battleship force. Why don't you come and sit with me?" Qin Ju did not dare to disobey Mo Jun's invitation. He immediately replied respectfully, "Yes." Everyone looked at Qin Ju, who had left Qin Yiming and Qin Chongxiao and walked towards Mo Jun. The expression on their faces became somewhat playful. Why did he have to choose now to talk about the transformation of the 10th Army into a battleship force? Mo Jun's actions were clearly to pull Qin Ju out of the whirlpool that was the Qin clan. This was clearly telling everyone that they could attack the Qin clan, but not Qin Ju. Everyone could understand Mo Jun's intentions. Qin Yiming could naturally see that Mo Jun's actions seemed to be protecting Qin Ju, but in reality, he was weakening the power of the Qin clan. Qin Chongxiao looked at Qin Yiming's gloomy expression and said indifferently, "Calm down. Don't let others see you as a joke. Things haven't developed to the worst point yet." Chapter 620. Mo Jun slowly walked to the highest platform of the first meeting room and sat down. Qin Ju stood behind him respectfully like a guard. "Today, the chairman has more important things to do, so I will preside over today's meeting." Mo Jun looked at everyone with a smile and asked, "I wonder if anyone has any opinions on this?" Hearing Mo Jun's words, everyone responded and expressed that they had no objections. Everyone in the world knew that the Grand Marshal of the Military Department, Mo Jun, and the Chairman of the Federation, Gao Un, were in cahoots. If Mo Jun said that he would preside over this meeting on behalf of Gao Un, then he must have been instructed by Gao Un. Since the Chairman of the Federation had no objections, what objections could they have? Since no one has any objections, then let's do it this way. Mo Jun looked around the scene and looked at everyone. Finally, his gaze landed on Ningya. "Ningya, your teacher didn't come?" Facing Mo Jun's question, Ningya replied, "Marshal, my teacher has important matters to attend to and can't leave." Mo Jun understood Ning Zhongtian's situation. If it wasn't for something very important, Ning Zhongtian would never leave the Black Moon Combat Academy. Therefore, he didn't ask any more questions and turned to everyone. "I see that everyone is here. Let's start the meeting now. Now, let's settle the first matter, which is the alliance between the Star Dragon Federation and the Jie Mountain." Mo Jun turned his gaze to Zhong Qiyu, who was sitting next to Ningya, and said to the crowd, "Let me introduce her to everyone. This lady sitting next to Ningya is Miss Zhong Qiyu, who is representing the Jie Mountain to attend the conference. I think everyone has heard about the two of them crossing the thunder tribulation of the nascent soul together not long ago, so I won't go into details." Before Mo Jun finished speaking, Zhong Qiyu stood up and bowed slightly to everyone. Everyone responded with warm applause. "Miss Zhong, I'm sure you've heard about the reappearance of Zerg in the Carefree Secret Realm. If you have any questions about this, you can ask. We'll definitely tell you the truth." Mo Jun smiled and said to Zhong Qiyu, "This is the foundation of our cooperation to form an alliance." Zhong Qiyu looked at Mo Jun with a subtle gaze and said indifferently, "I do have a few questions that I want to ask." Mo Jun chuckled. "Please go ahead. First of all, as far as I know, it wasn't only you humans who encountered Zerg in the Carefree Secret Realm, but also the monster race. Marshal, you must know that the humans and the monster race of Jie Mountain get along well. If we join forces to resist Zerg's invasion, will the humans of the Star Dragon Federation hate the monster race of Jie Mountain? Marshal, please answer my first question first. If the first question can't be solved properly, I think there's no need to continue the discussion." Hearing Zhong Qiyu's question, the scene suddenly quieted down. Everyone's eyes focused on Mo Jun, wanting to hear how Mo Jun would answer Zhong Qiyu's question. After all, the war between the humans and the monster race had lasted for more than 8,000 years. It was basically impossible for the humans of the Star Dragon Federation to let go of their prejudice against the monster race in a short period of time. Under everyone's gaze, June chuckled and said to Zhong Qiyu, "I've thought about this question before. The war between the Star Dragon Federation and the monster race has been going on for too many years. It's been so long that people have almost forgotten why we're fighting. The humans of the Star Dragon Federation do have great hostility and prejudice against the monster race. This is impossible to change in a short period of time, and we're powerless to change it." Hearing this, Zhong Qiyu looked deeply at June and said, "If that's the case, then does Marshall think it's necessary for us to continue the discussion?" "Of course it's necessary." June looked at Zhong Qiyu and said, "Miss Zhong, I think seeking common ground while reserving differences is a very good way to solve the problem." Zhong Qiyu said indifferently, "Marshall, please tell us how to seek common ground while reserving differences." "First of all, if the Star Dragon Federation and the Jia Mountain form an offensive and defensive alliance, then we will publicize in the Star Dragon Federation and tell the people about the basic situation of the Jia Mountain. We will let them know the difference between the Jia Mountain's monster race and the monster race of the monster race. Secondly, the Jia Mountain doesn't only have a monster race, they're also humans. Our alliance with the Jia Mountain is mainly aimed at the humans of the Jia Mountain." "Marshall, is this what you mean by seeking common ground while reserving differences?" Zhong Qiyu frowned slightly. "If we only form an alliance with the humans of the Jia Mountain, won't we divide the Jia Mountain? I think both the humans and the monster race of the Jia Mountain won't agree to it." "Miss Zhong, please let me finish." June chuckled and said to Zhong Qiyu, "Resisting Zerg's invasion is not only the responsibility of the Star Dragon Federation and the Jia Mountain, it's also the responsibility of the monster race. I don't think I need to say more about the conflict between the Star Dragon Federation and the monster race. Once Zerg invades again, then whether it's the Star Dragon Federation, the Jia Mountain, or the monster race, they won't be able to stay out of it. They will have to fight against Zerg with all their strength. Although we can eliminate the conflict immediately, we can temporarily prevent it from happening. The Star Dragon Federation and the humans of the Jia Mountain will form the Human Alliance, while the monster race and the monster race of the Jia Mountain will form the Monster Race Alliance. We will split into two groups to fight against Zerg. The humans and the monster race of the Jia Mountain will coordinate in the middle. This way, we can form a more integrated alliance with the Star Dragon Federation, the monster race, and the Jia Mountain. While resisting Zerg together, we can avoid conflicts at the same time. What do you think, Miss Zhong?" Hearing June's words, there was a burst of discussion at the scene. June's alliance plan could be said to be unconstrained, but it was also extremely reasonable. It was simply tailor-made for the three parties. It couldn't be more suitable. Zhong Qiyu was also a little surprised. She didn't expect June to be able to think of such a perfect alliance plan. "Marshall, I have already felt your sincerity. I am also willing to believe that the Marshal is sincere in wanting to form an alliance with our Jia Mountain, but the matter of forming an alliance is very important. I really can't make the decision alone. After this meeting is over, I will contact the Jia Mountain as soon as possible and ask for their opinion before replying to the Marshal." "That's natural. We still have time to wait now, as long as it's not too long." June smiled and said to Zhong Qiyu, "Miss Zhong, now you can ask the next question." Zhong Qiyu took a deep look at June and asked, "My second question is, once our opinions differ, who do we listen to when we don't know who's right and who's wrong?" Zhong Qiyu's second question was much sharper than the first question. This was related to who would lead the alliance. The Star Dragon Federation was naturally stronger than the Jia Mountain in terms of strength and territory. Of course, they also wanted to be the leader, but the Jia Mountain might not think so. Chapter 621. Miss Zhong, to be honest, I've thought about your question before. June chuckled, but I don't think it's a problem. It's easy to solve. Zhong Qiyu raised her eyebrows slightly and said to June, "Then I'm all ears. First of all, In terms of overall strength, the Star Dragon Federation is far superior to the Jieshan. This is an indisputable fact, and we don't have to argue about it. Therefore, the leadership of the Alliance must be in the hands of the Star Dragon Federation. Before the leader of the Star Dragon Federation makes a major mistake, I don't want to see a power struggle in the Alliance. Secondly, if the leader of the Star Dragon Federation makes a major mistake when making a decision, causing the Alliance to suffer a major loss, then I agree to remove the Star Dragon Federation's leadership. Instead, the Star Dragon Federation and the Jieshan will establish the Alliance Parliament to jointly lead the Alliance against Zerg. Hearing Mo Jun's words, everyone fell into deep thought. Whether it was from the Star Dragon Federation's point of view or the Jieshan's point of view, there was no problem with Mo Jun's decision. Although the Jieshan didn't have a leadership when the Alliance was first established, if the Star Dragon Federation could always make the right decisions, then it didn't matter whether the leadership was in the hands of the Jieshan or not. And if the Star Dragon Federation made a mistake and caused the Alliance to suffer losses, then the Alliance would change from the Star Dragon Federation's dictatorship to the Alliance Parliament established by both sides. The Jieshan would then gain more speaking rights, and the Star Dragon Federation wouldn't completely lose their speaking rights. This was something that both sides could accept. Clap, clap, clap. Zhong Qiyu clapped lightly and said emotionally, "As expected of Marshal Mo, I'm very satisfied with your solution. But just like before, I need to communicate with the Jieshan before I can give you an answer. My answer is the same as before. We can wait, but not too long." Mo Jun smiled. "I wonder if Ms. Zhong has a third question?" "I do have a third question, but it's also the last one." Zhong Qiyu looked at Mo Jun. "Regarding the issue of soldiers' pay, how does the Marshal plan to solve it?" Mo Jun chuckled and said, "This question is also very simple. When the Alliance was first formed, because our Star Dragon Federation was the dominant party, every soldier's salary and pension would be paid by our Star Dragon Federation. In the future, if the Star Dragon Federation and Jieshan establish an alliance parliament, then the military pay will be distributed according to the number of people in the alliance. What do you think, Ms. Zhong?" "Marshal Mo, it's still the same." Zhong Qiyu smiled. "I don't have any problems now." Mo Jun looked at Zhong Qiyu with a gentle gaze and said, "I hope you'll only bring me good news." Following Mo Jun's words, there was a round of enthusiastic applause. Mo Jun raised his hand to signal for everyone to be quiet. After the applause stopped, he said to everyone, "Now that the matter of the alliance with Realm Mountain has been resolved, let's move on to the next problem." Hearing Mo Jun's words, everyone could not help but look at Qin Chongxiao and Qin Yiming. Now it was time to solve the problem of the Qin family. At this time, there was no smile on Mo Jun's face. He looked at everyone calmly and said in a flat tone, "As everyone knows, in the unfettered secret realm, Qin Haoshuan of the Qin family betrayed the human race and sided with Zerg. He became Zerg's lackey and almost killed everyone in the unfettered secret realm. Later, fortunately, Qin Xuan and the others stepped forward and eliminated Zerg, stopping Zerg's scheme in time. Otherwise, we might be in the middle of a war now, or even destroyed." Upon hearing Mo Jun's words, everyone's expression turned solemn. If the insectoids were to invade while they were unprepared, the Star Dragon Federation might really be destroyed. Now, what we need to solve is the problem of the Qin family. The Qin family must provide enough evidence to prove your innocence and convince us that there is no collusion between the Qin family and Zerg. Otherwise, we'd rather kill the wrong person than let him go. Speaking of this, Mo Jun's expression turned solemn. The reason why he was here today was to prevent Qin Chongxiao from acting out of desperation. Among all the people present, he was the only one who could firmly capture Qin Chongxiao. "Qin Chongxiao, I'll give you 10 minutes to prove your innocence." Hearing Mo Jun's words, Qin Chongxiao, who had been sitting quietly in his seat, slowly stood up and said to everyone, "The Qin family was established during the Great Chaos. It has been 10,300 years since then. The life and death of the Qin family has long been closely linked to the Star Dragon Federation. The Qin family has no reason to side with Zerg. No reason? Someone sneered. Isn't Qin Haoshuan a member of the Qin family? Do we wrongly accuse Qin Haoshuan? Although Qin Chuan doesn't admit it, he is still a member of the Qin family. The blood of the Qin family flows in his body. Qin Yiming could not help but ask. Then, did Qin Chuan side with Zerd? If not for Qin Chuan, Zerd's plan would have succeeded a long time ago. Please, even Qin Chuan doesn't want to have anything to do with the Qin family. Can you stop talking about him? Lu Qin sneered and pointed at Ningya. The person who can really represent Qin Chuan is sitting there. Silence, Mo Jun shouted. Don't speak until Qin Chongxiao is done talking. Seeing Mo Jun's anger, everyone immediately quieted down and stared at Qin Chongxiao coldly. They want to see how Qin Chongxiao was going to defend the Qin family. Qin Chongxiao looked around. Facing everyone's sneers, he said calmly, Marshal, I've said everything that needs to be said. I'm sure everyone here knows whether the Qin family is innocent or not. Mo Jun took a deep look at Qin Chongxiao and asked, Is this your attitude? Qin Chongxiao nodded. This is the Qin family's attitude. If that's the case, Mo Jun looked at everyone. Now, let's vote on your attitude. Marshal, the Qin family didn't provide any evidence to prove their innocence. I really can't believe them. Lu Chan was the first to stand out. I don't want to be stabbed in the back when I'm fighting on the front line. I agree. I also think that the Qin family isn't innocent. They must be eliminated. We'd rather kill the wrong person than let them go. This concerns the safety of the entire Star Dragon Federation. Marshal, please eliminate the Qin family. Marshal, please eliminate the Qin family and the traitors. Chapter 622. For a time, everyone attacked the Qin family and demanded to exterminate the Qin family. No one stood on the Qin family side and was willing to speak up for the Qin family. Qin Yiming looked at the scene in front of him, and his face suddenly turned pale. His eyes were about to pop out, and his whole body was trembling. These people were clearly trying to kill the Qin family. Just when Qin Yiming wanted to stand up and speak, Qin Chongxiao patted Qin Yiming's shoulder gently and motioned him to calm down. After receiving Qin Chongxiao's signal, Qin Yiming could only suppress the anger in his heart. He glared at those who clamored to exterminate the Qin family and remembered their faces. If the Qin family could survive this crisis, he would definitely return the humiliation that these people gave the Qin family today 100-fold. Quiet. Mo Jun spoke again, and the noisy first conference room gradually quieted down. Everyone looked at Mo Jun and waited for him to speak. Mo Jun looked around and said faintly, Those who spoke just now didn't believe the Qin family. Now you can shut up. I want to see if anyone here is willing to believe the Qin family, and for what reason. Hearing Mo Jun's words, everyone subconsciously looked around and wanted to see if anyone would stand up and speak up for the Qin family at this time. Marshal, I believe that the Qin family is not Zerg's spy. The betrayal of the human race was done by Qin Haoshuan alone and has nothing to do with the entire Qin family. A low voice suddenly sounded in the first meeting room, attracting the attention of everyone present. Everyone subconsciously looked at the person who spoke. When they saw the appearance of the person who spoke, the expression on everyone's face became a little strange. This person looked very unfamiliar and wasn't someone that everyone was familiar with. However, the clothes he wore had the symbol of Black City, and he was a high-level member of Black City. That was to say, this person's speech represented the will of Black City. When did the Qin family and Black City have dealings? Mo Jun looked at the person who stood up and spoke calmly and asked, Who are you? The representative of Black City looked at Mo Jun respectfully and said in a deep voice, I'm Zhou Meng, the Deputy City Lord of Sky City. Zhou Meng. Hearing this name, Ningya couldn't help narrowing her eyes slightly and said softly, So he is Zhou Meng. Zhong Qiu, who was sitting at the side, asked curiously, You know him? Ningya shook her head and replied, I've only heard that Qin Chuan has a senior sister called Zhou Lin. She has a very good relationship with Qin Chuan. Zhou Meng is Zhou Lin's father. Hearing Ning Ye's explanation, Zhong Qiyu couldn't help but reveal a look of understanding. She had once investigated Qin Chuan's information and knew that Qin Chuan had a very close senior sister named Zhou Lin. However, she didn't know who Zhou Lin's father was. Before, I only knew that Zhou Lin was from Black City, but I didn't expect her father to be the deputy city lord of Sky City. Ningya looked at Zhou Meng with a subtle gaze and said to Zhong Qiyu, Black City is the only legal underground city in the Star Dragon Federation. There are branches in every major city in the Star Dragon Federation, and Sky City is the headquarters of Black City. The position of Deputy City Lord is really not low. Zhong Qiyu looked at Ningya curiously and asked, Why? Do you think there's a problem with this person? Ningya nodded and said, As far as I know, Zhou Meng used to be the dean of a school in the state capital of Qing. Later, the school closed down because of Qin Chuan. Zhou Meng disappeared after that. This time, he appeared again and became the deputy city lord of Sky City. The change is too big. Zhong Qiyu slightly frowned and asked, Maybe he made some contributions to Black City during the time he disappeared, so he became the deputy city lord? No. Ningyu shook her head. You're from Jieshan, so you don't know much about Black City. To become the deputy city lord of Black City is not something that can be done just by making some contributions. In an organization with such a long history like Black City, it's very difficult to climb up without any background. Zhou Meng can become the deputy city lord because someone is supporting him, and this person's position in Black City is definitely not low. So why are you so concerned about this person? Zhong Qiyu was puzzled. What's the relationship between Black City and Black Moon Combat Academy? Black City and Black Moon Combat Academy have no relationship, but Zhou Lin and Qin Chuan are related. Ningya slightly pursed her lips and whispered, I'm worried that Black City will make use of Zhou Lin and her father to do something that will make things difficult for Qin Chuan. Do you understand what I mean? Hearing Ningya's words, Zhong Qiyu's expression suddenly turned cold and said in a deep voice, I don't care if they're from Black City or White City. If they dare to scheme against Qin Chuan, I will not let them have an easy time. I hope that it's just my imagination. Ningya sighed and said, and I believe that Qin Chuan will make the right decision. Qin Yiming was very surprised. Their Qin clan in Black City had never had any dealings. He didn't understand why Black City would suddenly stand up and publicly support their Qin clan at this time. Father, did you arrange this? Qin Yiming looked at Qin Chongxiao in confusion. What benefits did you promise Black City? You don't need to know this. Qin Chongxiao said lightly, This is just the beginning. Following Qin Chongxiao's words, another person stood up and said loudly, Qin Haoshuan is only a junior of the Qin clan. His actions can't represent the entire Qin clan. I don't think that the Qin clan should be completely negated because of one person's mistake. Everyone's expression changed when they saw the new person who stood up. After Black City, another force stood up to support the Qin clan. Furthermore, it was the famous Guang and company in the entire Star Dragon Federation. I agree. We can't condemn the entire Qin clan because of one person's mistake. The third person stood up. The force behind him was the largest shuttle manufacturer in the Star Dragon Federation, Tianxin Group. At this time, the faces of those who proposed to exterminate the Qin clan became extremely ugly. They didn't expect that the Qin clan would be supported by so many forces. The key point was that they didn't receive any news before today. Mo Jun wasn't surprised by this. The Qin clan had been passed down in the Star Dragon Federation for tens of thousands of years. If it was so easy to overthrow it, it didn't deserve to be called one of the four big families. More and more people who supported the Qin clan stood up. The number of people who supported the Qin clan even surpassed the number of people who condemned the Qin clan just now. In an instant, the Qin clan, which was in a precarious situation, gained the support of nearly half of the people. The combined strength of the forces behind these people was extremely terrifying. Chapter 6:23. The asterisk minute. How did this happen? Lu Chun looked at the people who stood up in disbelief. He didn't understand what these people were thinking. Why were they supporting the Qin family so strongly? Not only Lu Chun found it hard to believe, but the others who wanted to attack the Qin family were also stunned by the scene in front of them. If the forces behind these people who stood up united, even Mo Jun, the most powerful person in the Federation, had to give way. Even the chairman of the Federation, Gao On, had to treat them with caution. How could the Qin family unite so many forces? Even Mo Jun might not be able to get so many people to support him. They couldn't figure it out. No one could figure it out. Not to mention the others who couldn't figure it out. Even Qin Yiming, the head of the Qin family, was stunned by the situation in front of him. Although he didn't understand why these forces were so supportive of his Qin family, this didn't stop him from being excited. That's great. With the support of these forces, even Chairman Gao wouldn't dare to attack us. We are saved. Qin Yiming said excitedly to Qin Chongxiao, "Father, you're really amazing." Looking at Qin Yiming's excited expression, Qin Chongxiao didn't feel happy at all. Qin Yiming didn't know anything, but he knew very well how much he had paid in exchange for the support of these forces. Anyone else? Mo Jun looked at the crowd calmly. Who else supports the Qin family? Don't come one by one. Stand up together. Hearing Mo Jun's words, a few more people stood up one after another. Seeing this scene, the faces of those who were still sitting became extremely gloomy. At this moment, the number of people who stood up had exceeded the number of people who were still sitting. In other words, the number of people who supported the Qin family had exceeded half of the people present. The Qin family is indeed the Qin family. It's really extraordinary to be able to unite so many forces without anyone noticing. Ningya praised. Suddenly, she changed the topic and said, "However, the Qin family must have paid a great price to survive this crisis. I don't believe that these forces would help the Qin family for no reason." Zhong Qiu nodded lightly and said to Ningya, "You're right. However, no matter how great the price is, it's worth it for the Qin family." Mo Jun scanned the crowd and looked at the people who had stood up. The corners of his mouth curled up slightly, revealing a subtle smile. After that, he said to the crowd indifferently, "I believe that everyone has seen it clearly. There are still many people who are willing to believe in the Qin clan. This means that the Qin clan is not as bad as everyone thinks." Upon hearing Mo Jun's words, the expressions of the seated people became extremely ugly. In their opinion, these people did not believe in the Qin clan, but believed that the Qin clan could bring them benefits. But then again, the reason why they attacked the Qin family and wanted to exterminate the Qin family was also for their own benefits. Since so many people are willing to believe in the Qin family, why don't we give the Qin family another chance? Mo Jun turned to look at Qin Chongxiao. Qin Chongxiao, if Zerg invades our world again, are you willing to be the vanguard and lead the Qin family's disciples to fight? Upon hearing Mo Jun's words, the gloomy expression on the seated people's faces instantly became somewhat playful. Although the Qin family could avoid a disaster today, if they were to fight against Zerg on the battlefield in the future, their losses might be even greater than today's. Qin Chongxiao did not expect Mo Jun to suddenly say something like this. He actually wanted him to lead the Qin family's disciples to fight against Zerg on the front line. Even though he had never fought against Zerg before, he could imagine how ferocious Zerg's attack would be when the war broke out. By then, even if he was a nascent soul cultivator, there was a great risk that he would die. Mo Jun was pushing him into a fire pit. Before Qin Chongxiao could say anything, Qin Yiming stood up anxiously and said to Mo Jun, "Marshal, although most of the Qin family's disciples are cultivators, they don't have any experience fighting on the battlefield. If we arrange for the Qin family's disciples to be the vanguard, it's not a big deal if we die, but it's a big deal if the entire alliance's strategy is ruined." Qin Yiming's rebuttal was not unreasonable. What he said was reasonable. If the Qin family's disciples who did not know how to fight on the battlefield died, it would not be a big deal. However, it would not be good if the entire alliance's strategy was affected because of this. Yiming, shut up. Qin Chongxiao shouted angrily. I'm talking to the marshal. You have no right to interrupt. Qin Yiming immediately said, but slap. Before Qin Yiming could say anything, Qin Chongxiao gave him a tight slap on his face, interrupting what he wanted to say. You unfilial son. If you dare to say anything else, I'll strip you of your position as the head of the Qin family and kick you out of the family. When Qin Yiming heard Qin Chongxiao's words, he felt extremely wronged and upset. However, he did not dare to say anything else. He was not worried that Qin Chongxiao would strip him of his position as the head of the family and kick him out of the family. He just did not want others to see the father and son as a joke. After reprimanding Qin Yiming, Qin Chongxiao turned to Mo Jun and said in a low voice, Marshal, I've offended you earlier. Please forgive me. Head of the Qin family said those words out of goodwill. It's all right. Mo Jun smiled and asked, Chongxiao, do you have any objections to my decision just now? Qin Chongxiao replied, I don't have any objections. However, I have a request that I hope you can agree to. Mo Jun smiled. Just say it. The Qin clan has a total of more than 1,200 cultivators. Among them, less than 200 have experienced the battlefield. I hope that the marshal can dispatch a group of elite instructors from the army to train the cultivators of the Qin clan. Otherwise, when the time comes for us to go to the battlefield, we won't know anything and miss the opportunity. When he heard Qin Chongxiao's words, Mo Jun looked at him deeply and said, I'll make the arrangements. What other requests do you have? That's all. Qin Chongxiao said righteously. It's the honor of the Qin family to fight for the Federation and the Alliance. The cultivators of the Qin family will fight at the front. I'll kill those who are afraid of fighting with my own hands. When everyone heard Qin Chongxiao's powerful speech, their expressions changed subtly. If the Qin family could survive this disaster, they would have to think twice before making trouble for the Qin family in the future. The matter of the Qin family finally came to an end. The meeting that gathered almost all the higher-ups of the Star Dragon Federation and the Boundary Mountain also came to an end. Some people were happy about the result of the meeting, while others were sad. The most discussed topic was naturally the Qin family that had been appointed as the vanguard. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.